This is the Great Alaska Hunting Podcast. I'm Dalton Gray.
And I'm Moriah Humphreys.
Broadcasting from our hometown of Fairbanks, Alaska. This show is brought to you by Stealthy Hunter. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Welcome back to the show this week, everybody. I'm Dalton Gray.
I'm Moriah Humphreys.
And welcome back to episode 2 of our brand new podcast. Thanks for joining us, Mo.
The Great Alaska Hunting Podcast.
The greatest Alaska.
The greatest Alaskan.
The last Alaska.
Lots of plays on words we can do with this thing.
Yeah. Well, here we go. Last week, 2 weeks ago, we spoke about August and our sheep season. Talked a little bit about that hunt there with the client. And we alluded to Mo going on his first sheep hunt.
Yeah, we did.
The month following in September or Septembre.
Yeah.
To be cultured.
Whatever, man.
So this week we're going to talk a little about what happened in September. I went on a couple different moose hunts in different parts of the state. Actually, 3 different parts of the state before I
Did you really?
Before I ended up killing a moose. Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
I went to moose camp with my wife and your dad. For a few days.
Did you ever go to our other friend's moose camp this year or no?
No.
No, not at all. Okay. I wasn't sure.
And then after that, we went to moose camp with Remy.
That's right. I forgot about that.
And then we came home, and I turned around and left again with somebody else.
Might have to have him on at some point.
And took out a boat.
Yeah.
And went out and finally killed a moose. But spoiler alert. So your first solo sheep hunt.
First solo sheep hunt.
But first, thank you to those that work with the podcast here, the Great Alaska Hunting Podcast. Our title sponsor is Stealthy Hunter, Ryan Lampers. If you're looking for any fine backcountry gear, rifle covers, glass and pads, backcountry medical kits, don't be looking for anything on my shelves in here.
I was, but apparently it's not. It's probably packed up and ready to go, huh?
I think everything's probably put away for the season. Well, at least until deer season comes up, which is rapidly approaching. But Stealthy Hunter offers rifle covers, glassing pads, trauma kits, supplements.
Yep.
Of which I took turmeric this morning. I'm running low on that. I got to start putting an order together. But go ahead and shop some great equipment from Ryan Lampers and Co.
Yep.
And a few other partners that we're working with. One of them is Hammer Bullets. Known Hammer for a number of years now.
They have.
And there are many who talk and few who shoot. And you and I have both shot a number of animals with Hammer Bullets.
We have.
Now.
Yeah. You know, I was just had lined up. I had my brother-in-law was over at the house the other day for my sister-in-law's birthday.
Gotcha.
And we were the only 2 guys there. There's a bunch of women in the family.
Funny how you just tend to congregate with the men in the family over in one
ended
part
up,
of the house.
I was giving him. I had one of his dad's shotguns, and his dad had passed away recently. But rest in peace. But anyway, I had three cartridges lined up on my nightstand that I'd been looking at. You know, the catch-all spot for when I've been unloading guns when I brought them home and stuff. And so I was showing him, like, this one's this. I was just, like, naming grains and speeds and everything and what I killed with the different cartridges. But I was
he's just...
He seemed interested. Yeah. He seemed really interested. But
there's hope.
It just also, I don't know if it was quite his thing to be that nerdy about it or whatever. But
not nerdy, educated.
Yeah, that too.
But anyway, we are working with Hammer Bullets. We appreciate our friendship, continued friendship with Steve and Brian down there in Montana. And here on our deer hunt upcoming, we'll hopefully be using some more Hammer Bullets on them deer. What you bringing on that deer hunt?
6mm arc.
Nice.
Yeah, that's the plan anyway.
I'm still undecided.
I've got to finish working up my load for it. Actually, I have one load worked up for the 6 arc with Hammer Bullets, but that's a fur bullet. So I'm going to work up a deer bullet.
That's one of the non-hollow points.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Non-expanding.
So I'm going to work up an expanding 88 grain Hammer Hunter. I have the bullets, I have the brass, I have the powder. I just need to take the time to put it together. Might be tomorrow's project, actually.
It's always the time. Yeah. I came across some powder and I think we'll.
And you got to work up your load too. So
I got to work up a load for the 7mm. I think.
What you doing tomorrow?
I think that one's going. We're probably going to have to figure something out, possibly tomorrow.
Okay, that's if we don't do it, we're not going to do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, without further ado, sheep hunting.
Sheep hunting.
So in the last one, we kind of left off about the end of August season. You were on your first sheep hunt as the packer on that hunt with our client, and you talked about how much you enjoyed yourself.
I did.
And you wanted, well, while you were on the sheep hunt,
yes,
you kept telling me, man, I got to go home and do this.
That's what, I'd heard from you and other guys and podcasts and whatnot. Like,
always talking about the sheep bug.
Always talking about the sheep bug and always talking about sheep hunting. And I just didn't get it. I was like, okay, I'll do it. Obviously, people.
Sure.
So I went. We talked about all that. But the one thing I really came away from that whole thing in August was, this really does get to you.
Yeah.
And then that's all I was thinking about.
What part of it do you think that got to you?
I think it was...
Was there any one thing about it that you just really liked?
The overall dichotomy of that complexity, yet it's so simple.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's because of what we have for gear today.
Yeah.
And guns and everything that we have, it makes it a complex subject.
Sure.
But once you're out there, you have what you have, and it's a very simple thing. You walk and you hunt. And it's just as simple as it gets. And I love complex things.
Yeah.
Right. I really enjoy my job, and I do everything from, electric, plumbing, carpentry. Yeah. I have my hands in all of it. Mm-hmm. Almost every week, I find my hands in several different trades, and I love that. Mm-hmm. It keeps my mind active, and I find the same thing, just like with nerding out on cartridges and powders and everything else.
Yeah.
But then also being able just to stop worrying about all that and taking a break. Mm-hmm. And sure, at the same time, you're thinking about the gear that you're using and how you wish they made this or that, or finding out that they do and that you don't. You're not the one that has it that trip, But the great little item I had on this trip that you didn't have. And at the beginning of the trip, you were like, and then you're like, by the end of the trip, your pride was up, and I don't need one of those. Was my air pump.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to get yourself an air pump, dude.
I don't know. I'm still back and forth on it.
If you had one, I'm telling you, man, that thing.
It's just one more thing to charge.
I'm going to bring it down southeast.
Are you?
Oh, yeah. And I'm going to sit there going, wee, while you're over there with your roll-up sack. Yeah.
To clarify, you're talking about an
inflate a sack, yes. You know what I mean. I'm sure the folks know what I meant. Their minds didn't go where your mind went.
But for Thermarest.
Yes.
This is to inflate your inflatable
they're not the only ones that make
sleeping mat, but yeah. And so they make a pump for cheaters as yourself.
Yeah.
That don't want to sit there and either do it.
Hey, I'm not the only one.
No, I know you're not. I just think it's great to be able to give people a hard time.
I loved it. And it honestly, so the biggest takeaway I took from that hunt was if I go on a solo hunt, I need to go really light.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to start that off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you came off of that sheep hunt with us.
Yeah.
You came home, closed the book on that, went back to work?
Went back to work for a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that.
Yeah.
And my boss actually in the middle of that sent me out to his cabin that he just purchased this past summer to put a new roof on it.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that part in the story.
It's such a terrible job, man. We're you're texting pictures of your buddies of being on a boat in the middle of work day, and you take your you go get in your boss's truck and you take his boat down to the lake and you put it in the lake and you go work, right? Yeah. No, trust me, we worked hard on that roof, but didn't actually go fishing the whole time. I thought about bringing fishing poles and stuff, and then I didn't.
You didn't fish one time?
Not on that trip, no.
Wow.
I wished I had, but I didn't. And but anyway, we put a new roof on it, and and had a good time. It's hard for it to feel like work.
Sure.
Even when you're roofing, when you can see just a lake, right? And you're in the trees, and you feel like I grew up going to my dad's trapping cabin and hunting cabins, and it just felt like that. But I was working, but it wasn't the same. Yeah. But I was getting paid for it, and it was cool. So I did all that, and what hinged on my hunt was I had planned out a very specific time talked to my boss about time off, and it was like I just come back from the guided hunt and all this kind of stuff. So time off was like my boss is very flexible with that, but in exchange, I work very hard to be very flexible for him. And so I got back and was like, hey, I know I just got back, but I really want to do a couple more days off because I want to go do this. And he's like, okay, I think we can work something. And then that roof job took a day or two longer than I thought it would.
Oh, okay.
And so I called him. We talked, and I was like, hey, can I get an extra day off then after the weekend? Because I was, of course, working it around a weekend. And I ended up with overall about a day and a half less of time on the hunt. And that will play in later on from when I got out there and got it started.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, so I went on the guided trip and learned a lot. And I didn't take anything I felt like on that trip that I didn't need. And I don't think I... or didn't use except for maybe a few real small items. And I didn't, come away wishing I didn't have anything. I didn't come away wishing I had more. Yeah. Like I did really well. Yeah. And I think that's the result of having you to run stuff by, watching guys do pack dumps, and just having spent my life growing up in Alaska. And maybe I hadn't done that kind of hunt before, but it's not that hard to figure that out when you've done everything else. Yeah. Yeah. And, so, but then I got to thinking, okay, I'm going to go hike in by myself. Yep. And I'm going to have to haul a sheep out by myself. In this situation, I'm going to have to carry water. So it was one thing to go in 60 pounds as a packer to have a few extra comforts. Yeah. To make myself more comfortable and to make the client and other people more comfortable. Yeah.
And that 60 pounds is including food weight as well.
Yes. Yeah. 60 to 65 pounds, including food weight when I went in as a packer. Yeah. But going in that heavy and then adding water, a spotting scope, and a rifle by myself was, I'd be 100 pounds.
And a tripod.
Correct. Yeah. And a great tripod. We're using it right now.
I have some complaints, but
you do. I had a phenomenal experience with this tripod, and you've had a terrible one. But
we can talk about that some other time.
That's another topic because the camera's on it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I just got home while we were out there, and then when I got home, I knew where I could cut weight, obviously.
Sure.
And so I started looking it up and finding it. And so a few quick things were I had the Jetboil Mini Mow when we went on the guided hunt, and it weighs, I believe, without fuel, it weighs just over a pound. And so I got home and I started looking stuff up, and because I was looking at like the MSR Pocket Rocket.
I have one of those.
And because then you get that, and you get a titanium cup, right?
Yeah.
And then you can go really light.
Yep.
And so I was looking at that, and they have the new Pocket Rocket Deluxe, which actually has like an igniter and stuff built in.
Oh, does it really?
And it's not that heavy. Like, it's still super light.
I think I have the Pocket Rocket 2.
Yeah, so that one and the Deluxe are what's really the two that are really popular, right?
Yeah.
Because the 2 is slightly lighter, but the Pocket Rocket Deluxe has a lot better, more efficient.
I want to say I've had the Pocket Rocket 2 since like 2020.
Okay. And so you had a Jetboil early on, right?
I did.
But you pretty much headed towards the MSR.
Yeah.
And really, I've stayed with the Jetboil stuff just because that's what I've always had.
Sure.
I've looked at some, and I almost bought the Pocket Rocket, but I started looking in the way that we research gear, right?
Yeah.
I started looking up the Pocket Rocket. Okay, if I get a Pocket Rocket and a titanium cup, how much does that weigh? And I don't remember what it weighed. I think it was about 5 ounces. 5 or 6 ounces.
And that's burner and cup.
That's burner and cup. Okay.
Okay.
And so I looked up the Jetboil Stash, which is a bigger cup. It heats in half the time that the Deluxe can heat the same amount of water in a titanium cup. It burns with about half as much fuel. It'll boil water, and because it has the ring on the bottom of it, and it weighed like 7.4 ounces. So it weighs a couple ounces more. Heats faster, it's more efficient.
And this is the Jetboil.
The Jetboil Stash. Because I started looking up, and you have, see, I think I nerd out on gear stuff, and then I look up and guys have charts where they have burned both of them a dozen times, and which one does better in wind, and all that. It's like, my goodness, I just want to know right? And so you find the data that you need, and you go, and that's what I found. Like, okay, it's the same cost to buy the stash, which was like, I think I got it on sale for $100, which is a really good deal.
I think normal price looks like it's about $150.
Yeah, it was on sale. There was a big Jetboil sale. Everything was marked down for a weekend or two or something. And
interesting setup.
It's sweet.
And so it comes with the pot.
Comes with the pot and the burner. Doesn't have an igniter.
And does the handle fold up over the top of the cup?
Yep.
So it's very similar in that regard to like the MSR reactor. And
then, so, I mean, I weighed mine with the fuel, or I looked at the weight of the fuel. I don't remember what it was.
And you said there's a ring?
Like that ring right there, the flux ring on the bottom, just like the old Jetboils came with. That's what made the original Jetboil so good.
Yeah.
Right, that's why it was so popular, because it could boil water so quickly.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I went with that. So that's one of the things I did. That cut me half a pound. And I switched from, I have a couple of, I still don't have a Thermarest sleeping mat, but one of these days I will. But I have I had a little bit of a newer, what brand? Static V insulated sleeping pad. Climate Static V insulated sleeping pad. And it was an insulated one that I had taken on the guided hunt. Well, I had one that was not quite half the weight, but it was an old Static V that I've had forever. And it was quite a bit lighter and smaller. So I took that instead of the insulated one. I took, one of the biggest things I did is, instead of taking a tent, I took a tarp. And I picked up this tarp. This is the tarp I took on the guided hunt.
Yep.
In which you were pretty impressed with on that hunt.
I was.
Okay. The biggest difference I made with it was I bought MSR groundhog steaks.
Yeah.
For my second hunt, because I bent the other ones to crap.
Yeah.
And I still have them. I'll throw it in with one of my cheap tents or something, right? But that was worth it. But I have pictures of this, and we'll throw them up.
Yeah.
On the video here. Actually, if I can throw them up for us to look at them here shortly. But so I took that, and so that saved me. I mean, good night, a tent, 3-4 pounds, right?
More than that.
Depends on the tent.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of
the ones that we were using in August
correct.
were over 6 pounds or so. I want to say.
I think they were about 5.5.
Yeah. Somewhere in that neighborhood then. Yeah, 5 pounds plus. And that was for a one-man tent.
Correct.
But those are,
but really nice ones. But
4-season rated tents.
You're carrying a tent and a tarp.
Exactly.
Right? So so I cut 5.5 pounds by not taking a tent.
Yeah.
And I figured out how before I left, how to pitch my tarp.
Yeah.
With my trekking poles like a tent.
Yeah. To have it somewhat enclosed.
And so, I mean, you can see the picture there, and I'll throw.
Yeah.
Obviously in the audio. Here we go. This is a good spot throw a picture up. But yeah, so I mean, that was one spot I camped there, and obviously that was on the way in when it was beautiful.
Yeah, I was going to say the weather looks pretty good.
It was pretty nice on the way in.
Yeah.
And you couldn't quite sleep straight length in the middle.
Kind of corner to corner.
But if you slept corner to corner, you were good and didn't have to touch the
Diagonal.
sides and whatnot. Correct. It
Yeah.
still had, and I had my pack in there with me. Had everything in the tent.
Yeah.
In the tarp tent that I made for myself with me.
Right.
I paid $60 for this at Sportsman's Warehouse.
Wow.
The groundhog steaks cost me $50 because I bought 10. Because the steaks this thing comes with aren't really worth anything.
Yeah.
And so even the cheap ones I had bought originally, I had replaced with a little bit nicer ones. But the groundhog steaks were another $50. But a Stone Glacier's tarp's like $180. I mean, you can easily go spend a $300 on one, easy. Nemo,
Hilleberg.
I know there's Seek Outside.
I have a Hilleberg tarp.
Oh, you got one finally. You're talking about it.
Yeah.
They look nice, and I could see why you'd want one.
It is nice, but it wasn't.
If you're going to talk about a first-time sheep hunter and you spend a lot of money on a lot of other stuff,
it was painful.
This is a really good way to do it. And the steaks I had originally worked. The Coglins, Coglin steaks. I think 8 steaks cost me like $14.
Those are the orange ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they just bend really easy. And so you just got to be careful with them. And they were bent out of shape from the first hunt, so I decided I didn't want to run, and I didn't bend to one of these groundhogs. It kind of shocked me that I could treat them the way I did.
I've had my MSR groundhog stakes for years.
That and the other thing is I have an extra amount of string with this, just because.
That's smart.
You never know, but anyway, so I have a picture here of what this looked like, and that was the number one, I think. Obviously, shelter is your number one.
Yep. Shelter
and your gear, and I'm not going to get into like the clothing and stuff I took. I did definitely do that, trying to be weight conscious. One mistake I made with that was I had purchased synthetic puffy pants to bring. Okay, but I still brought a full upper lower heavy merino wool base layer that was in a little bundle in the bottom that probably weighs like 2 or 3 pounds that I never touched the whole trip.
Yeah,
I forgot about it because I didn't need it.
Right.
And as cold as it got and as bad as the weather got, I never needed it, but I didn't know.
Did you end up using those puffy pants?
Oh yeah.
You like those?
Love those things. They're zip off.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, when it was cold and I had I had your sleeping bag that
the Western Mountaineering.
The Western Mountaineering down bag.
Yeah.
It's a very nice bag, but it made me say, I don't need a down bag. I'm gonna go synthetic. Because it got damp, especially in the tarp.
Right.
And that's where those puffy pants came in big time. Was one after a few days of that bag just not having much fluff. Being able to put those pants on and crawl in there just made a huge difference. I think it was the last day I didn't even take the pants off because it was so nasty outside. I hiked out with those on.
You hiked out with the pants?
Yeah, well, with the big zippers, you can dump a lot of heat with them on, and then that's the big thing. If you try to stop and take a breather in that weather, then you're freezing, right? And I knew I was on my way out, so I didn't care that I was sweating.
Yeah.
It just, you can't stop, right?
Right.
Because then you're going to freeze bad.
Yeah.
But I hiked out with those on in my grizzly mitts.
I remember you saying that you had your mitts.
I had the grizzly mitts on there, and there's no way I probably would have done damage to my hands if I didn't have those mitts on the way out. The weather was just that bad. Oh. It was wet and very windy. And those grizzly mitts get my hands warm, even though they were soaked.
Yeah. Well, I guess that kind of covers the clothing then. I had it on here to kind of hit on colder conditions and weight considerations that time of year.
Yeah, so, I mean, basically, I took the puffy, the synthetic puffy lowers and uppers. I took the, the Uncompahgre pants from First Light, and then I have the Stone Cirque. And then I took... for base layer, I had a lightweight merino. It's the what is it? It's that arrow wool top.
The wick
arrow wool wick top that was next to skin. For my legs, I had I think a lightweight merino, also from Sitka or something. Yeah. I like the merino for next to skin. Just biggest thing is smell.
Yeah.
And because it's next to skin, if you have a synthetic on the outside of it, it'll wick that moisture right out.
Yeah. Kind of counters with the dampness of the wool.
Right.
The synthetic will help dry it out.
The thicker merino doesn't work as well. But
right.
But yeah, then I had and then I had the First Light rain gear, the storm shelter rain gear. And I mean basically that's what I use. Well, I also had my Jetstream jacket, which was heavy. Yeah. It's not really a backpacker's item. But it works and it does well for what it does. And I think I had my heavyweight hoodie. Yeah, I had my heavyweight hoodie.
Did you end up hiking with that soft shell Jetstream on?
On and off. Yeah. On and off, depending on the wind. And its problem is it's so insulated as well that
it's got that heavy fleece backer.
Correct. And so, it's just that's the biggest thing is trying to figure. It's just the layer management as you go, especially in.
Yeah. I think the thing that always ends up getting me is about halfway through a sheep hunt, I'll go, probably should have brought something else, as far as like clothing pieces go, because I tend to experiment a lot with different stuff, trying to just, part of it's just the fun of it, right? I'm kind of a gearhead.
Yeah.
You are too.
I've gotten to be one.
Not everybody's like that. And some people will just not even be interested in experimenting with different stuff. And that's fine. Everybody has their different preferences, but a lot of sheep hunters, I guess even a lot of mountain hunters, a lot of backpack style hunters are a little bit more gear oriented people because so much of what we're doing rides on how our gear performs. If your rain gear soaks through on day 2, then you're going to be miserable for the rest of your hunt, right? And that's why a lot of guys up here opt for lightweight rubber rain gear, even sheep hunting. There's a guy that we both know of here in Alaska. He's killed a ton of Dall sheep, and he refuses to wear breathable rain gear. He swears by wearing rubber rain gear. He would rather be wet from sweat than soaked through with cold rain. And he has a point, but to each individual is their own preference.
Right.
And if you haven't had an issue with it, or if you have the right stuff, or maybe you've just gotten lucky.
Right.
So, there's different approaches to every aspect about gear and how heavily you want to get involved in that. But soft shells are an interesting one for me because I didn't bring a real soft shell this year sheep hunting at all.
You brought that.
I brought the seemingly discontinued, by the way.
You mentioned that.
Yeah. The Sitka.
I don't remember what it's called.
What was it? It was some kind of a hybrid
I dedefinitely
soft shell.
It's a windbreaker.
Yeah. It was very, very light. I mean, it was a few ounces, if that.
That's the one item, like, on both those hunts I wished I could have replaced with something was that soft shell. It's just too heavy for its purpose. I have insulation layers if I need to insulate.
Yeah.
Something for wind that's not going to also warm me up a ton.
Yeah.
And make me too hot.
That's going to bother me that I can't remember the name of that jacket.
Something like that, either the Sitka or I'm sure First Light probably makes something.
That kind of thing, that there's been, I want to say Patagonia or some brand like that made, I think they even called it like a wind shirt.
Okay.
And it was just a real compact, just lightweight, didn't seem to weigh much at all. But a lot of guys have used that. And then the Sitka one, I apologize for not knowing the name of that. But at any rate, it has a breathable, stretchy panel on the back of the jacket where your pack is up against your back.
Right.
So that it allows sweat and moisture to get out there. But the rest of it was a Gore-Tex wind stopper material. And it was super lightweight, very, very thin, but really windproof. And it shed light rain pretty well, too. And so for not having to hike in a rain jacket all the time if the wind was ripping, that jacket was pretty nice, but it wasn't a full-blown soft shell.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, I don't think I would carry a full-blown fleece-backed soft shell sheep hunting unless it was really, really late season when I didn't even think there was going to be much rain. But because then at that point, if it's cold enough...
Because even then, you can still be getting wet.
Yeah.
Even if you like the sleet.
Exactly. But if it's relatively dry, but you don't want to be wearing rain gear, because rain gear is somewhat fragile, whether you go rubber or breathable, you tear holes in the stuff, and it's a $350 or $400 breathable jacket versus a $150 soft shell. I would rather tear up the cheap
$250 soft shell. Yeah.
Sure. But that kind of balance there with the soft shell argument, I think there's validity to both sides, just depending on time of year and mountain range and how long you're going to be out there type of deal.
Well, for overall comfort level, since we're on soft shells, I prefer my Stone Glacier to Haviland. Yeah. The fit and the comfort, it just feels like it belongs on you.
A little more stretchy than the
It's a little more stretchy, and it's a tighter fit, and like it kind of compresses layers in a little bit, and it's really nice, but it doesn't do anything for wind. Yeah. The Jetstream has the Gore wind stopper in it. Yeah. And it's a huge difference. And that's why I find myself I wear the Stone to look nice, as a like a casual decent jacket, walk around town or dress up for me, right? Yeah. And then I wear the Jetstream when I just need to be warm or the wind, right? They are really different pieces. They're supposed to be the same, but they're not. Right. So, I mean, anything else on the clothing factor? I mean, hats, gloves.
Yeah, I mean, that's all pretty basic.
Time of year, season, all that, where you're going.
So this is not your first solo hunt.
No.
But it was different in that you were totally self-reliant out there.
I was totally self-reliant, but not only was I totally self-reliant, because I've been that before. Yeah. By a lot, but
a little bit more extreme.
I was a little more extreme in the fact that I had hiked in. Yeah. And there wasn't, I mean, a lot of my solo hunt stuff before was wheeler in and then hike around, right? And, hike around to a base camp where the wheeler's at. And so you're never more than a few hours usually from the wheeler. And a lot of that, the wheeler areas that I go into, I was very alone because it's a very extreme swamp. And, I mean, you remember going into spots and doing some of that stuff with me. And you've been in some of those areas, and there's a reason there's nobody back there.
Yep.
And it's not because there's no animals. It's because there's not really much of a trail where there used to be one. It's, it's the bottom's falling out.
Right.
And so I've been in some rough stuff like that, and even in some pretty bad situations, but I've never been so far out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the biggest thing for me, like I said 2 weeks ago, was with a sheep hunt, every decision you make beforehand on what you bring is very, very important. When you're going on a wheeler, there is 100, this is a little exaggeration, but not really. You can give or take 100 pounds of gear, and it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
Right?
Easy to get carried
you just
away.
keep throwing stuff in there until you go, do I need this much crap? And then you say, why not?
Yeah.
Especially if you're pulling a trailer or something, sometimes it's just easy to just throw in, oh, I'm going by myself for 3 days, but you know what? I'm going to grab a case of Red Bull and a case of water and a case of sweet tea.
Yeah.
And then it'll all go in my truck when I get back, and I'll drink it throughout the year. But it'll all go out there with me, because why take the time to unpackage it? Because it'll go in the bottom of the trailer. I'll never know it's there until I need it.
Right.
You can't do that when you're sheep hunting.
Yeah.
Right? It's all very, very specific. Now, on that topic of decisions and things, I mentioned to you beforehand my spork as one of the items I was going to bring in to talk about today.
That was on my list to bring up shortly.
What's that? The spork?
Your spork.
Okay, well, here we are. And kind of circling back around to the jet boil and the food thing, I figured out the food thing pretty good. I had that from the first hunt and whatnot, which you recommended, and that being the one thing I kind of was short on the guided trip. Food was a little short because I was worried about weight. I should have been a little more worried about calories. I did really well with food on this solo hunt. I had exactly what I needed. However, what you forget to throw in your bag can make a big difference. And I left this at my house.
You didn't bring your spoon?
I did not have my spork. And I don't know when I realized that. If it was in a truck on the way out, because like I said, I was cut for time, so it could have been. If it was on the way in to the hunt, or when I sat down for the first meal, I don't know. But at some point, I had the sinking feeling. I think it was probably when I sat down for the first meal, and I'm digging through the bag. Where's it at? And then I just have this, like, I never grabbed it from the special spot I put it in at home. And this is a Sea to Summit spork. I think I picked up at REI here local.
Titanium deal.
Titanium, super light. You don't know you have it. It's so light.
Right.
And
or you just forget that you don't have it.
Correct. And a little pouch. This isn't the pouch that came with it. I picked this up somewhere else to have one to put it in and protect it a little bit. But I found this very valuable on that guided hunt. And then I meant to take it with me on the personal hunt, and I did not have any eating utensil of any sort now, because this is what you carry.
Eating with your hands.
No. Those Peak refuel meals come with a nice big rip-off top. And I would fold that thing in I would fold that thing in half and pinch it between my fingers and use that, and I was able to eat. It wasn't the greatest thing I ever done, but it worked.
Oh yeah.
But man, did I miss the convenience. So, as easy it is to be sure you got everything.
Yeah.
Just go through your bag one more time.
Yeah.
If you're sitting there going, no, I've got it, just do it one more time. That, and it's funny because it's really creature comfort.
Oh yeah.
As is a lot of the stuff, right? Who needs a sleeping pad, really?
Yeah.
I mean,
there are some guys that hunt like that.
There are, and there's guys that just carry this dumb little foam ones that I remember sleeping on as a kid, and as a kid I could barely sleep on them, and I think how, but if you're used to it, you're used to it.
Yeah.
And I survived fine, obviously, but it made a big difference. And then I was getting food on my hands, and things were getting sticky because food was getting on stuff and out of the bag because I didn't have a way to easily manage it. Couldn't mix up the meals very well.
Yeah.
Right. I'd pour the water in, seal it up, and then I just work the meal a whole bunch. And for the most part, that seemed to work, but nowhere near as good as good old fashioned titanium spork, 21st century invention right there.
I now carry 2 sporks because I've had clients forget theirs, and many times I've had to loan my client.
You're sharing one?
Yeah. And so now I just carry one in the lid of my pack and one in that little red dry bag that stays in the lid of my pack.
Well, because it doesn't even weigh an ounce, right?
Now I've got 2 of them.
And so, yeah, that was one of the other items I was going to talk about today. What was the third thing? Oh, yeah, that's right. Since we're on the food and nourishment thing, I took 10 liters of water with me, 1 liter in my GSI Microlight. Thank you for the recommendation on this, Brian Call. In your video, you said it's the light, having an insulated bottle, and talked to some guys who are just like, whatever, plastic bottles are good enough because they're light, right? But this doesn't weigh very much. Yeah. And having an insulated bottle.
Do you know how much that does weigh?
It's like half the equivalent of of
a Yeti?
No, way less than half of a Yeti.
Probably a third.
It's about half of because the other things that I found like local that were pretty light was the Hydro Flask, correct? And so this was about half of the equivalent size Hydro Flask, right? A liter or 32 ounces. Mm-hmm. And obviously I've got some stickers on there, got some wear on it, but took this on both those hunts, and I also replaced the lid on this, also due to Brian's recommendation, and that was a good decision. This is actually a GSI lid. He recommends a Camelback one, but this is basically the same thing I found on their website when I ordered the Microlight, and it's worth it. It's not that much money, like $30 or $40 when you add the lid in. It's maybe 50, 60. Yeah, but it's not heavy. Mm-hmm. Just a few ounces more than plastic, I believe, and it's having really, you could pour coffee in here. Yeah, to keep something hot, or having cold water in something like this on a hot day is really nice. It's really nice because if you're dipping water out of a creek, and it's cold, and then you put it in your pouch and you're hiking through the sun, it doesn't take very long for that water to come ambient temperature,
stuff hot and the cold stuff cold.
And then that water doesn't taste all that great. Yeah. You guys were drinking out of your plastic bottles.
Yes, we were.
And I was drinking out of this, and every time I'd pull this thing out, and it's just this crisp, clear, cold water, and it was incredible. And it wasn't as big of a deal on the colder, the September hunt, but why not? Yeah. You didn't bring any coffee with me on that one. Yeah, I was going to, but I was going to buy some instant coffee or anything to stay super light. Yeah. And then I just didn't, it just kind of ran out of time. And my, pour over setup, that's another thing I sacrificed for for weight. Right. And I don't remember everything else I sacrificed for weight. I didn't bring a book. I like to bring a book on almost any kind of hunt I do. I had a spotter and everything. And so everything just adds up. Weight adds up so quick. Yeah.
Bringing creature comforts like coffee and things like that are usually dependent on the client for me. If I've got a client that doesn't really care about drinking coffee on a sheep hunt,
I sure missed it on my solo hunt.
Yeah.
I'm a big coffee guy as it is. And I've already gone through 2 mugs here.
Yep. I'm on my second cup here too.
And it's just usually I have a pour over setup and everything, but that
I like it, but it's something that I can live without.
That adds up a lot.
If my client can do without it, then we do without it.
And so when the instant coffees are really light, those little instant packs, and especially being solo, I was in there for 4 or 5 days, 4 or 5 of those, and then maybe 4 or 5 hot chocolate or something similar. That's not, because some of the hot chocolate stuff's really heavy, but something that's lightweight or chocolate flavored that you could, because what I found myself doing is crawling in my tent in the sleeping bag in there and heating up water and drinking hot water. Yeah. Because it was better than cold water when you're trying to warm up. Yeah. And it would have been really nice to have some flavor to it, So that was one thing I kind of I just kind of ran out of time.
Just take some of that powder out of your freeze-dried meal. just some powder, and then just put it in your water.
Some buffalo or whatever.
Yeah. A little bit of flavoring.
I don't remember what all meals I brought. I don't remember.
You could have a cup of hot buffalo bison stew or whatever it is.
Yeah. But
that would be that'd be a unique.
You know what I had? I had that pesto pasta again, man. I love that stuff. I know you said it was okay, but the first one I had I loved, and the second one, I've had several of them now.
If I have other options,
that is one of my favorites.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. And the Alfredo pasta, can't stand it. That's the one you said was the best, but
having my proud Italian heritage that I do, I do love good pasta.
But anyway, that Alfredo pasta in me had an experience, and after that, I don't want to touch stuff again.
Just a quick caveat. I did have my brain space out moment earlier about the Sitka jacket, and people are going to ask about that.
Right, yeah.
So it's the Mountain Evo jacket.
Mountain Evo jacket.
It seems to be discontinued right now.
That's right. I remember that now.
Can't find it.
I remember it being a super simple name.
Yep. Anyway, let's jump to a quick break, and then we'll step right back on in. Welcome back after the break. Talking about your solo hunt.
Yes.
Kind of went over some gear, what you brought, what you didn't bring.
Right.
Considerations for hunting alone poses slightly more risk, a little bit more danger, perhaps.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of knows that as a given. Recently, there was a situation up here in Alaska where we had a fatality from a bear attack.
Yeah.
From a guy that was out hunting by himself. And obviously something went wrong. He was surprised, taken off guard, and ended up, unfortunately, his life was taken by that bear.
Yeah.
So that's a risk that everybody kind of takes when you go out in general, although it is really uncommon to have a bear attack like that,
in Alaska,
let alone
especially.
a fatality. And by the way, that's I don't mean to just lightly speak of that.
Right.
I mean the utmost respect for that individual's family and for that situation. I think that's just terrible. And our hearts go out to people that go through that, the families that go through that. However, every hunter understands that that's part of the risk that you take when you go out in the woods, especially by yourself. So I guess kind of with that in mind, one of the questions that kind of goes around and gets asked a lot, and we even got some questions about that for people that were anticipating this episode about your solo sheep hunt.
Right.
They even asked me, and I told them you have to wait till the episode airs.
Oh, nice.
But I'll go ahead and have you answer it. Did you carry a sidearm on your solo hunt,
or
did
not.
You just carry a rifle?
Just carried a rifle.
So you felt comfortable, obviously,
I did.
with just having a rifle.
I did. For one, I knew the area I was in.
Yep.
Right. I know there's a lot of considerations, and there's a lot of we've talked about a lot of this at other times on other platforms. But the whole thing between rifles and pistols.
Yeah.
And what do you carry, and what caliber of a rifle is better than what caliber of a pistol, and it's a whole rat's nest. And should you carry a revolver or an automatic? And and everybody has their opinion, and everybody has their, well, it's stupid, but you can do it if you want, or whatever. Everybody's got their thing. What I took me a while to realize, but what I fully realized and understand now is carry what you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable with a 500 Smith & Wesson, and that's what you want to carry, I don't think it's the best choice. I think it's too heavy and too slow of a gun, but but do it. If that's what you're comfortable with, then carry it. If you don't think that a 9mm is everything you need, then that 500 Smith & Wesson is going to do more just in your own mind than anything else.
I was just going to remark on that. It seems like situations and guns and platforms and semi-automatic handguns versus revolvers, and all of that really can be traced
Hammered
down
versus
to
hammerless.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of that can be traced back to whatever makes you comfortable is going to allow you to think more clearly.
Correct.
It's going to give you a level of confidence.
Yes, exactly.
And that clarity of mind to be able to make a decision and not second guess, man, I don't know if I want to have to shoot this bear. I've only got this 9mm pistol. Whereas somebody who goes, I've got a pistol, we're fine, right? There's going to be a different decision and process of decisions and a series of decisions that will lead to potentially different outcomes.
Right.
And so, revolvers, semi-automatic, it doesn't matter. But you chose to go with no sidearm. When you were packing on that hunt with me, you chose to carry a handgun and not a rifle, which is pretty standard goings for a packer.
Yeah.
Because I carried a rifle and not a handgun, right? And so kind of on that note, you were, I think, alluding to before we got off on the pistol thing, that when the situation allows and when you're going to have a rifle anyway, then just use your rifle.
Just use your rifle. Well, and some of it, too, is like there are situations where, sure, I'd rather have a handgun than a rifle with a bear, or especially a longer rifle, right? Yeah. I was carrying my Tika 300 short mag. It's not a short gun. It's not quick and easy to get around if I have to shoot something at close range. But I'm not in the kind of situation
Yeah.
on a sheep hunt. Very, very rarely on any sheep hunt will you be in the kind of situation where you're suddenly going to run into a bear at 10 feet or 10 yards.
Yeah, I mean,
it could happen, and it can, but most of the time you will have plenty of time to be ready.
Question on that then. How did you carry your rifle on your sheep hunt?
Most of the time, it was strapped into my backpack.
Kind of in that side elastic pocket?
Yep. Actually, it was strapped in the same side as the spotter. Or no, as the tripod. Spotter was on the other side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because the pack, I love the initial ascent pack, but I do think their side post should be taller on the carbon frame because I could not effectively hang my rifle off of it. It just kept slipping off.
So I have come across something interesting.
What's that?
I found a little device, mod, whatever you want to call it. It's a little plastic piece that goes underneath your pack strap. Not your pack strap that goes to your skin here, but the outside of your pack strap where it has that little webbing right there. That outside strap,
right?
It goes underneath that, and it has a little hook on it so that you can put your rifle over your shoulder and the sling is retained on your shoulder.
See, something like that would have been
really simple.
Right, and does it keep the sling from sliding up and down your shoulder as well? Because that's the biggest issue. That's one of the biggest things I have is it keeps kicking, that butt keeps kicking out, and then the barrel's sticking further back, and then it's hitting. And
I think that'll depend on the sling material.
Because I did try to just hang it on the pack and different things, and it kept slipping and this and that, and I finally said, screw it, and strapped it to the pack. And, and for the most part, I could see a mile in every direction, right?
Yeah, if you've got that kind of visibility.
It's like, I wasn't worried.
Right.
And
right.
I've talked about this too, is I've spent a lot of time around a lot of bears, and I'm just not that worried about it. Should I be cautious? Yes.
Yeah.
But there's an attention that goes into when you spend so much time in the woods that you just pay attention to what's going on around you. And if you notice you'll notice something's wrong.
Yeah. Situational
if something's
awareness.
wrong. Exactly. And it may not even be, what I hear it referred to and stuff called, your lizard brain. Right.
Spidey senses.
Yeah. Spidey senses, lizard brain, right? And
Sixth sense.
Yeah. And it's just, there's enough stuff going on around you. Yeah. You may not be able to figure out what it is, but there's something that has let you know there's something wrong. Yeah. Right. And if you're just ready.
And by the way, when you get that sensation, pay attention.
Pay attention. Yeah, exactly.
There's a good chance you're about to encounter a situation that you need to have your head up for.
Right. So I mean,
so you carried a rifle, not a handgun.
I carried the rifle. I carried the 300 Winchester short mag, my favorite cartridge and rifle at this point. Yeah, I keep looking at nicer guns and this and that, and I'm kind of like you were with your 7mm for forever. Where
that 7 mag did not miss a hunt for years. For me.
I'm not taking it for deer this year, but that's because it's overkill for deer.
The vast majority of rounds out there are overkill for those deer.
That's true. For what we usually hunt with up here, it's so fast, and it's so it's like I've killed a number of deer with it now, and it's like I walk up to them, and it's like
it's not even tough anymore.
Well, it's not that. I feel, I don't know. You hit a deer in the guts, and half the backstrap on the top of the deer is messed up because of the shock, and it's like, and not saying that's a common thing that I've done, but I did have had that happen on a fast shot, right? And it just at some point, when the spine's broken, and you shot underneath the spine by a significant margin, maybe. It's one thing to have that with a bear. With a bear, you kind of want that, right? That's why you carry a bigger caliber for a bear, is for the effect. What did we call it? We knockdown power, right?
That doesn't exist.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that, just that, maybe it'll stall him for a few seconds and allow me to get an extra shot off, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
That extra pop in the cartridge. But I'm shooting deer, and I really just want to be able to put a little hole through the heart and lungs, let it die, and do so without, cutting it in half.
What's interesting about
and that's deer, an exaggeration to some extent, but they're tough animals.
and this is totally unrelated, but this is fine. This is
okay.
This is a sanctioned tangent. What's interesting is I've shot deer down there with a wide variety of rounds and a wide variety of bullets over the years, and very few times have I shot one and had it just flop over dead. Very few. Like maybe
like
only
every one I've shot has flopped over dead.
Yeah, but I wasn't shooting hammer bullets until very recently.
And you were shooting your 7mm, which is a little smaller, a little slower than my 300.
Shooting a 150 and 140
at what speed?
At 3,000 plus.
I mean, I'm 3150 on my 168s.
Yeah,
that's
for quite a while. I shot 140 class bullets that were going 31 and change.
And before the hammers, I was shooting Barnes.
Yeah.
And they didn't have as much of a devastating effect, obviously, but I still saw that just overwhelming. Like, that's what I felt when I first shot the deer with the Barnes. It was like 200 yards.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, the one that I shot the nut off of.
The testicular.
Yes.
Yeah.
That one, it was like, this is a lot of gun for this animal.
Yeah.
And that's where I started to, because previously, I've hunted whitetail, but I bow hunted.
Right. But even with that one, there wasn't as much damage, I think, as there would have been with a hammer bullet.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. There's a huge
Which
difference.
Is a huge difference. Now, I will say that the ones that I have shot with the hammer bullets and then with the lighter constructed lead core bullets over the years have done dramatically different things than compared to like a heavily bonded bullet.
Well, and that's where like the
bullet.
interlocks and stuff are really popular for deer.
Or the SST. I've shot a few with those out of a 300 Magnum at 50 yards. And that was years ago. But just like they swallowed a hand grenade, you know.
Well, you saw that deer I
very
shot
dramatic.
At 60 yards this year or last year?
Yeah. Yep.
And
I did.
And that was the one that was a little further back. And I ran up and just very, very fast shot because it was walking into the trees. And it was a little far back. But it went underneath the spine by several inches. And there's a chunk of spine broken out of the middle. And the back strap that there was gone. And it was like, I'm kind of glad I didn't hit this thing up by the shoulders. But
which is a great argument and standpoint to have. You know what? Smaller cartridge, slower.
Well, and a lot of guys hunt those with a lot smaller.
Oh yeah, 243 is extremely common.
A 6mm is a slower 243. A 6mm arc is
heavier, higher BC bullets.
And I'm taking that 6mm arc for that, and a little bit of a tangent, a little bit of foreshadowing.
Yeah,
and
we'll have a lot more to say about that later.
Oh yeah.
So you go sheep hunting. You're by yourself. You're walking in. This is a different area, obviously. Different area codes by a long shot from where you were before.
Big state.
Yeah, a lot of elbow room up here.
A lot of elbow room everywhere.
Kind of why we like it up here.
Yeah.
You can just kind of do your own thing and be left alone.
Right.
But so you went into a spot that I had kind of clued you into from me being in there a number of years ago. Now it had been a few years.
Well, I had spent some time in there at one point for something else.
Yeah.
And I remember you had were asking me all these questions about the spot, and we're like, just this is why I'm asking you these questions. But and so I had some rights to some information to some extent.
Well, hunting partners have that, so
that's true.
So anyway, so you're busting in there. You're on the hoof.
Yep.
Were you running the same boots that you were previously?
So there's a boot story. I forgot. I didn't tell in the last episode. I wanted to tell in this one.
Okay.
And it revolves around the first hunt in August. But I had gone into that hunt. We talked about I had wet feet and stuff. But one of the boots, my left boot, there's this weird part where the leather was sewed together with the toe.
Oh, that's right.
Had started to bend over due to moisture or what, I don't know. And it was rubbing on my big toe. And it was like kind of the top left of my big toe. It wasn't really bothering anything else, but just that. And so I was kind of holding my feet different. And that was the only issue I had with my boots aside from them getting wet. I didn't have hot spots or any of that. And I think I have very well-conditioned feet from walking a lot, both for my job and hunting. But I got a significantly ingrown toe while on that first hunt. From that, it just rubbed that spot enough, and the toenail started to grow down in there. And after being out there 7 or 8 days, I did all that, got my pack together, and was headed down towards where you guys were. And my toe was just bothering me a lot. I was like, whatever, it doesn't matter. They're expecting me to come later anyway. They'll find a camping spot and they'll, we didn't know if there's water there or not, so I was still waiting to hear from you guys on whether or not I needed to get water. So I didn't want to outrun water. So I just stopped what I was doing, found a good spot to sit. It was a beautiful sunny day. Sat down, took my pack off. I had one of the things I brought extra of that I didn't use everything of was knives. I just wasn't sure, right? Yeah. I had a Havalon, and I had my ATK from Yukon River Knives, and my Hunter. I believe were the 3 that I had. And so I sat down, got my knives out, and like, I got to do something on my toe. And so what I ended up using was a combination of everything. Yeah. But that Havalon, I think, will be something that always stays with me. Yeah. Because of what I could do to myself with it in a situation. And it wasn't like, but I didn't have everything I needed, but I was able to carve out around the ingrown toe. Yeah. Release pus and all that kind of stuff, clean all that out, and
sparing no details.
Yeah, I mean, cutting into the skin and everything around that toenail. Yeah. And once I did that, I wasn't able to, I kind of shaved off the end of it as much as I could. And it gave me relief for the rest of the hunt. It was much better the rest of the hunt.
Yeah. I remember it was pretty swollen at one point.
And I got back to town and working and not doing anything about it again. And it got to a point again. And then at home, when I had a little more better tools at my disposal and whatnot, I actually was able to cut it out properly and take care of it by myself at home.
How good did that feel?
Once it was done, great.
I'll bet that relief was awesome.
But yeah, honestly, just from the first time, performed a minor surgery on my toe and went with it. But that there was that with those boots. But yes, I wore the same boots on the next hunt. Yeah. And I don't believe I still had that issue. I think that had been taken care of by that point. It didn't bother me on that hunt if it was. Those were the crispy Brickstalls.
Was that the original Brickstall?
They're not the original, like the discontinued ones. Yeah. But maybe they were the Brickstall guides, or not the guide. They were GTX maybe. Yeah. Yeah, they're right. A 4 flex.
Sounds right.
Yeah, and non-insulated. Which I don't know, the way those boots don't breathe, non-insulated to me was the way to go. It felt like a 400-gram boot. That's the way I feel about those boots. Yeah. Some guys don't agree, but at least a 200. But anyway, yeah, I love those boots as long as they don't get wet. Yeah. Because they're not waterproof anymore. But yeah, I wore them on that and loved them. They did great.
Yeah. So you're hiking in there.
Yeah.
All seems good.
Yeah.
You make it into sheep country.
I do.
Take over.
Okay. Well, here's another picture here. So I get into where you said, when you get about here, you should start seeing sheep. Yep. And it was just drop down through up and over and around a saddle and this and that, and look, and I look, and there's white spots down there with the naked eye, right? And I was like, sheep, after it took me a day and a half to get in there because of
it's a long walk.
It's a long walk, and with the work thing and not getting out there till way later in the first day than I planned on and all this kind of stuff.
Sure.
And and I was 75, 80 pounds with everything. With water.
Yeah.
20 plus pounds of water.
Yep.
Long walk, and a lot of the you climb up with an initial ascent of several thousand feet. And then you get around the peak and you think, oh, I'm running ridges from here. And then you look over and that next ridge is a saddle.
Yeah.
And then the next ridge is a saddle. And then the next ridge is another saddle. And you think, how can I be dropping that far back down? And then I got to go back up further than I just was, right? And, you learn to not just climb to the highest point of everything. Let me put it that way. Yeah. It's just being new to it. But anyway, I got in there in middle of the day, like 3 o'clock or something, maybe earlier. And there's sheep. And I've got a picture here. I'll probably throw this up when we get on the video here. But I've got 3 sheep in the scope here, and I don't know if I ever took pictures of more because they were kind of spread out, but there was a total of 7.
Mm-hmm.
They were all used in like 1 or 2. I think there were 2 like half curls.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing obviously big enough in that anything to even close the gap. Although I was only a mile away from them, and it would have been a very, very easy hunt at that point if one was. But so I looked at those. Nothing legal. Still, I did spend quite a time looking at them and enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And then I spent the rest of the day hiking around that spot, right, that area, looking for other bands.
Did they ever seem to pick you out?
No.
Were you pretty much in view?
They didn't seem to care. Yeah, very much. They did not seem to care a bit. I just worked my way around the area, hiked up and around and over some other ridges, and found some interesting stuff.
Yep.
Right. I was texting you about that. Yeah. And it's cool when you get back to where you feel like you're the first person that's ever been there, but you're not. It's the 21st century. Everybody's been everywhere, or somebody's been everywhere. But and then you find something. They're like, well, this is cool, but
it proves that you were not the first
one. No, I was
there.
not the first one there.
Yeah.
Anyway, and
my dad tells a story about going sheep hunting with his dad when he was a teenager, and he said that we get out in the middle of the mountains here, and we're thinking that, man, this could be the first time that anybody's ever walked here before.
Yeah.
And then you find an old crushed up can of Coca-Cola.
Right. That seems to be the thing, man.
Yeah. Or my favorite one is to find a spent piece of brass.
Oh, there you go.
Out in the middle of the mountains.
I was actually found an old cola can at that site
did
that
you
I told
really?
you about. Yeah.
No kidding.
It's insane what you just be like. You're following maps or something, looking for a bear bait. You're just hiking back in somewhere, and it thought kind of crosses your mind. Like you feel like nobody's been here. This is untouched, untouched wilderness. You may be 50 yards off the trail, but you suddenly are not on a trail, and there's nothing there. And then there's a tree hanging off a can hanging off of a tree or on the ground or whatever, or a flag, or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hiked up around, looked at these sheep a bunch more that day, and they kind of went up over a ridge that was down lower, and I watched them that night. The wind picked up that night, and it got kind of nasty, and I camped up behind some rocks.
What do you think your temperature was on that first afternoon? Was it
I wasn't
50s,
really paying
40s?
attention. The first day and afternoon in there, it was probably 50, 60. It was very nice.
That warm.
It was very nice that first day.
Wow.
It did not stay that way.
Yeah.
So I hiked another ridge of the same area. I hiked over to and looked up a direction from that evening. Looked up a direction that you had said, this is the next place to go.
Yep.
Right.
If they're not here, then they're there.
And here's the next picture for that. And this is what I saw.
Yeah.
That's a 5 mile, I believe, straight line to where they are.
Yeah.
Right. And I was using a Miopta S2
They
spotter.
were exactly where I said they were.
They were exactly where you said they were going to be. And it took me a little while to pick them out, even through the spotter, right?
Well, that's a long ways to pick them out.
Because, you don't know if they're rocks until you watch them for a while. And so that's my mouse. But there's 5 in this picture.
Yep.
And I believe there may have been 6 total. I don't remember exactly. But, and so my story.
And they're only probably third or half the way up the mountain.
They were not very far up. No, they were down below the steep. And in that drainage. And I was in a position where I could see into that drainage from 5 miles away. And so I'm looking at those sheep over there. I'm also watching the sheep that were close. And, go to bed that night. Wind started to pick up, and it had rained a little bit at that point, some point in the evening. And I woke up, and it was sleeting and nasty, no visibility, couldn't see anything. And so I don't think I moved till like 11 that day. It was just absolutely nasty, just in the tent and
low ceiling,
watching movies and whatever, right?
Heating up hot water.
Exactly. Wishing I had some instant coffee or something. Yeah, exactly. Trying not to eat all my food.
Trying not to eat too much that you had to go out and take a bathroom break in the storm.
That too. Yeah.
There's a science to that.
It's called patience. It's really easy to eat when you're not moving. Especially when you're not eating enough as it is.
Yeah, you just
burn
get
so
snacky.
many calories. Yeah. But oh man, you look forward to that hot meal so much, especially when it's a nasty day. But anyway, I got to the next morning. I didn't end up moving, like I said, till 11. So at this point, I don't remember what day it is, but I had to be back to work soon.
Yeah.
And so I start hiking to where I could see these sheep. And I got over halfway, but the terrain got a lot more gnarly.
Yeah.
A lot rockier, a lot steeper, a lot more up and down, a lot more elevation change.
Yeah.
And I got over halfway. I got to a point where I was hoping I could see these sheep again from a few miles, like 2 or 3 miles instead of 5. And I couldn't. I never saw them again. And they may have just never moved back up to that spot. You know, like I said, the weather had gotten real nasty, and who knows where they went or what they did. If they went up and over, around or down, who knows. I don't believe they were there in the morning when I got up, or either. At least, well, it was so foggy, I may not have been able to see. But
well, just before you move on from this part, how well do you think you were able to get a look at these sheep from that distance? Just out of curiosity.
I mean, as well as you can see in that picture, I could tell they were sheep.
Yeah.
I could not tell male, female, right? Yeah. You can tell, like...
I just didn't know if you were able to zoom in on your phone.
That's as zoomed in as I could get.
Oh, that's as much. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was max zoom.
Yeah, 5 miles is a long ways.
It is. And I don't think if I had that scope, if I would have... a scope as nice, as a quality as that one is, that I would have even been able to spot them.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's the best picture I have. That's why this is the one I pulled up, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know what they were, but my story is that's where the rams were, right? Probably is.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I hiked over I got close, but then I got to a point where there was a big elevation loss and then gain again. And then it went higher, and it was even more rocky for that last few miles. And I know from that evening, I had to be back at work in 2 days. Back out and back to work, right? So I had 48 hours. And when you're miles back into the backcountry, that really starts to, and I knew my boss was relying on me. I mentioned the thing, I really try to be there when he's expecting me. And I had the thought, should I text him, on the inReach and be like, hey, what's the, but, for one, I didn't have enough food.
Yeah.
Right. I had exactly the food I needed.
Yeah.
And
a significant amount of driving time to get home.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so, it took me a day and a half to get in there or so. I mean, about a full morning to evening day walk to get in there. Plus, I'm further than that now. So, it was 9 o'clock when I stopped. So it wasn't do I keep going today question.
Yep.
It was, okay, I got to stop and camp. And then do I keep going tomorrow? Well, no. And if I can see a sheep and it looks like a doable hunt tomorrow morning, then yes.
Yeah.
I will make a try. But if I can't see something in the morning, I'm going to go the other way.
Right.
So that night I set up camp, and then I hiked back up to where I could see and looked around, and, glass all over the place. And I think I maybe spotted the other sheep from before, from behind the ledge over there.
Yeah.
Around some rocks or something. And, didn't see anything, went to bed, got up, once again, hiked around, glassed, nothing. So pack up and start hiking out. Got back to the spot where I saw sheep initially, looked at those sheep again, or didn't, maybe they'd moved on. I don't remember. No, there was one there. That's right. There was one. Okay. The other 6 had moved off. There was one ewe sitting there. And so I think I have a picture. Yeah, there you go. This is my spotting scope adapter that I use for my phone, since I have this fancy phone, right, with the big folding thing on it. Right. I love it, except that it's not as convenient for certain things, right? Most scope adapters don't work with this phone.
Sure. Because
you require a special case of some sort. This one has this piece right here that snaps onto a magnet and locks in with these holes with this scope adapter that I have, right?
Oh,
You've got these 2 little dots here and magnets, and so it pops on there, lines it up, and it honestly worked quite well. It wasn't quite as smooth as what's the one you have?
The Olin.
The Olin, right? It's not as smooth as the Olin. It's not as fast.
Yeah.
But it did work. It worked fine.
Yeah.
And it's not as easy to look through the scope while the adapter's on and all that. But
right.
For I will say, this big of a screen hanging off the front of a spotting scope was awful nice.
Yeah.
That was very nice. I did like that a lot. But I don't know. One of my considerations on when it's time to upgrade is going to be for backcountry hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple. This phone has several major things that I don't know if it's worth it for it, because for one, the phone scope adapters.
Yep.
That's not very good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't regret owning it, right? But like, it's just not the best option. And then this uses more battery life and is a little bit more to charge. And so that all starts to make a difference. Now, I was in there for 4 or 5 days, so battery was not an issue. I carried one charging pack and I had all the battery I needed. I don't think I charged my inReach once the whole trip.
Yeah.
Right. If you can't carry your inReach, and I bought an even newer one with even better battery life when I got back. But it's just that's a big consideration for me. But I think this was the last day that I took this picture. With the scope here, looking at that one sheep. Yes, before the storm. So it was beautiful at this point. It'd been foggy in the morning,
but this
had cleared up a bit.
I know this is off camera at this point. This is not on the show, but we're looking east here.
North.
Okay. Yep. All right.
Yep.
I'm just trying to get my bearings here.
Because you've been in there?
Yeah.
So, no, that's north over that first saddle, once you get over that first saddle.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay. I thought you were farther another direction. Okay. But
I know what you're saying, but I remember with where my pack is and everything. Yeah, no, that's where I was. Yeah.
Okay.
And
totally unrelated, and it doesn't help the listeners.
No, it doesn't. But you all can sit there going, "Where's he at? Where's he at?" Like I would.
Good luck.
Right. But so yes, before the storm.
Yeah.
I then pack everything up, and with a heavy heart, but not really disappointed, just wishing I had seen at least seen more sheep and had a chance to kill something and all that kind of stuff. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I turn around and I start my hike out on down the saddle and up the other side. It doesn't take very long. A little bit of blue sky and sun that I had, and I ate lunch when I was sat here looking at these sheep and everything. Right. It started raining, and it started sleeting, and then it got socked in. And my goal that day was to make it to where I had found water. Mm-hmm. I had about 2 liters left on me, which is, I had 4 liters that afternoon left on me. Like I had my time, my water and food was dead on for calculation for what I needed, right? But I knew where water was, so I wanted to get to that so I could add just a little bit more, because I knew it'd take me, a day, 2 liters to get there. Yeah. And I got there. By the time I got there, my plan was to stop, take a break, and keep going. Mm-hmm. I stopped, set up my tarp just as a wind shelter, sat down in there, and just started getting cold. Mm. And the wind started to pick up. And by this point, I didn't sit there very long, and all the blowing water started freezing to the grass and the rocks. Mm. And I couldn't see anything.
That's not real good.
And I was just like, yeah, no, this is where I'm at for the night. I was too cold. I'm already damp from earlier from just hiking through this. So I set up camp. And in the morning, when I crawled out of my tent, this was the landscape. And, my tent's, we've got a picture pulled up here, and my tent looks like it's about collapsed in on itself.
It does, doesn't it?
Now, I took the legs of my Peak 44 tripod that thread off, which was a major complaint of yours.
Yep.
But while I was in the tent, I took those, flipped them around, and stuck the rubber feet up against the tent where it had blown in. And I had plenty of space, and that gave me what I needed inside there. And obviously, that was my door that I had a way of strapping it all down to where wind and stuff didn't get in. And with that, with those points pushed up and stuff, it wasn't an issue being in there. Aside from moisture, that's just a battle.
It didn't have any issues with the wind at all.
No, nothing but like that. But I was able to take care of that with those posts. And this was the worst. The worst it was. Yeah. And you see all the ice slid down at the bottom of the tent. There was ice caked all over. When I took those poles down in the morning, the tent stayed the shape where the poles were because of all the ice on the outside of it. I had to hit all that ice off of there, which I probably should have just left because it was holding it in place, right? But
wow.
yeah, I got up in the morning to this, and well, what do? It's the last day. I got to be to work tomorrow. So, and yeah, it's ice and snow and winter wonderland.
Yep.
And so I packed everything up and strapped the tarp to the outside of the bag and
Yeah.
kept on a little bit more gear than I had the day before and started hiking.
How high in winds do you think you got that night?
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Especially, a month later.
Especially being on the inside of a tarp tent and just listening to everything just rumble all night long.
I've been in some very high winds.
You think it was 20, 25?
I would say yes.
Yeah.
It was probably around there, maybe a little bit higher.
Do you think it could have handled much more?
It's really hard to say because when you're sitting in that kind of a situation, you're wondering when it's going to break free.
Right.
When am I screwed?
Right. Well, but
it handled it extremely well.
Yeah, and just for purposes of the listeners, we'll put this picture back up here. But the major thing that I see that could be a fault in this as a tent is that you don't have any guy lines above the ground level, right?
Correct.
And so there's nothing attaching the tent to a guy line that's not on the bottom.
Yeah. Now, if I had wrapped a string like around where the trekking poles are in the tarp, and pulled that down as a guy line, helping, that probably would have helped.
Right, but even then, though, you don't have any support at the halfway point of the fabric here, like between the ground and the top of the tent. There's no midway guy line.
So that's where
hold the sides out.
Those inner posts came in when I was in there.
Right. Yeah, and that's not to say that didn't work, but that's the downfall of a shelter like that.
It is, yeah. It did have some significant downfalls.
Right.
It worked. And the white thing sticking out, that was my ground cloth. I grabbed a piece of metal wrap that we use at the sheet metal company I work for, and it worked very, very well for that. It's like 4 feet wide.
Yeah.
So it was
kind
nice
of a contemporary to like a Tyvek wrap.
Something like that, little heavier duty.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was probably kind of heavy. I didn't weigh it, but threw it away when I got back, right?
Yeah.
But it was a scrap piece I pulled off of somewhere before, and it's like it was garbage when I grabbed it. It's garbage when I'm done with it. But, honestly, it handled it really, really well. And I don't know. I think the weak points really is where the trekking poles are sticking up.
Yeah.
Because that's where that's where all the pressure is.
Yeah. So then, do you think that the fabric, like just that tarp in general, do you feel like it held up pretty well?
I feel like it held up amazing.
Did you get any micro holes in it from any ice tearing free?
I do not think I did. However, so I did dry it out when I got home, obviously, before I wrapped it all up. Mm-hmm. And I did look briefly. I didn't see anything.
Yeah.
Obviously, there was a little bit we found on the one corner from some rocks.
Yeah.
At that one point.
Yeah,
but
some abrasion.
I didn't see anything like that at all.
So then the follow-up question is do you think that you would ever use a tent that is specifically designed for that type of situation without having like a freestanding four-season style of tent?
Would I ever hunt like this? Would I ever go on that kind of a weather again with what I had?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd do that again.
Yeah.
It'd be lightweight.
That's something that I've thought about before. There are some companies out there that make tents that are designed to be tents, not just tarps that you can wrap around into a tent, but a tent that doesn't look too dissimilar to that right there.
No, they're not,
that are a floorless option, ultra lightweight, even lighter fabric than that, but that have guy line attachment points that you can actually stretch it out and actually get all of your tensions laterally and halfway up the tent fabric and things like that, and that actually have some kind of a draw cord door, or some of them have a zipper, but something like that is very intriguing. Obviously, there are inherent risks that come with that light of a shelter. You don't really have the strength and the durability of something like a Hilleberg Solo, but you're a lot lighter.
You are. And would I have rather been in a Hilleberg Solo that night?
Probably.
Oh, yeah. And I was also 18 pounds less on water or whatever.
Right.
So, 5.5 pound Hilleberg Solo would have been great at that point. But was it worth the sacrifice? Absolutely, to go in. And for most of the time, I had some high winds and stuff. Mm-hmm. This was the only serious, snow would have obviously could have become a major thing. Mm-hmm. But, being able to wake up and knock it off is always an option. And, it all comes down to moisture management is the biggest downfall of this, really. Mm-hmm. Honestly, having that tripod with those legs that I could use as interior poles really solved my problems. because it's only one side that wind's blowing in, right? So the other side's fine. And if you stretch out the one side, the other side's good. And really, the tent, it looks really stretched in the picture, but the tarp doesn't look like that. It doesn't like it's not all deformed and stretched.
Yeah, I'm sure that's just wind, and then the one side's up for your door and things like that. Yeah.
So the following part of this, and really, it's funny because the most experience maybe that I got on this solo hunt, the most compounded amount of experience in a period of time was this last day. Combined with this weather and this ice in the mountains like this, and then hiking out in it. Because this looks socked in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was. And then it got even more socked in.
Yeah.
And to the point where I couldn't see 50 yards a lot of the time.
And it's still blowing like crazy right here.
And it's still blowing like crazy.
In this picture.
And it's still foggy, and the ice and stuff is still freezing to everything. And so, you can't not be wet, right? You might be wearing whatever you're wearing for rain gear.
Yeah.
And, obviously you're somewhat dry in some parts of you, but other parts of you are just wet. And this was that morning that, yes, I kept the puffy pants on.
Underneath your rain pants.
Underneath the rain pants.
Did you have your stone pants on underneath those?
No.
Or was it just long John bottoms, puffy pants, and then rain pants?
Correct. Yes, I believe that's what,
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I did not. Yeah, I had taken off the stones for sleep that night before, because the stones would have really, the de Havilland stone pants would have been heavy for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then I'm hiking out in this super foggy, and this is when I really realized, like, I've read a lot of maps and hunted a lot and felt very comparable in looking at maps and routing a course, and I routed my course in there. And yeah, I glanced at the one you showed me, but when I went in on this, you weren't there to double check my route. I just went in and did it, and I did fine, right? But I had visibility. I could see. I could get around one hill or mountain and look and say, "Yep, oh no, look around. That's definitely the next spot to be."
Yeah.
And look at the map, and and do that.
How much of that route that I had shown you did you end up following, just out of curiosity?
You'll have to show me that route afterwards to fully make the determination, because I didn't remember enough to.
Oh, okay.
I need to actually draw my route before I forget.
Yeah, I thought I had shared that route with you.
No, because you showed it to me when we were out of service.
Did you know that you can now share Onyx pins and routes offline?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, just via
magic? I don't know.
I don't know. Interesting.
Supposedly you can share information while you're offline now.
Huh.
Which would be pretty handy.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, why didn't you?
I just heard about the new feature. I think it's a relatively new
We'll have
update.
to figure it out. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, so I relied more on my GPS functionality, mostly of my phone, in this than I ever have before. Because I couldn't see because what would look like the shelf in the saddle I'm supposed to walk out on, but you can't see the bottom and you can't see across.
Right.
And so you think, oh, well, this must be the way to go because it's the most gentle slope or whatever. And so you start, but I'd walk 100 yards sometimes, phones back out, and to see where the dot moved to say, okay, am I going the right direction? And then you walk another 100 yards or 200 yards and you pull the phone out. And then maybe the fog clears just enough and you can see the hill or the next peak. And you're like, okay, I know that's the way to go.
Right.
And then so you cut that way. And then you're doubting yourself as you're cutting around that one. But no, I found myself, and that's what made me want to buy that new InReach, is because the new InReach is the 67i.
I'm going to pick one of those up.
Insanely better maps.
Yep.
Has a lot better battery life. Everything about it is nicer than the old Explorer Plus. And not the 66i. The 67i. The 66i has not a good battery on it. It's about the same as the 67i, but the battery in it's terrible. And anyway, I picked one up, and I haven't really used it aside from setting it up at home. And it works with the newer Garmin apps and stuff, which are all a lot better.
Side question. Is all of my data from my Explorer Plus transferable to the 67i?
As in, like, spots and everything?
Yeah.
I believe so. I didn't have a lot on mine because I didn't use it a lot because it wasn't great. Like the topo on it was terrible.
Yeah.
But that's where I also learned that topo is not always accurate.
There's some of that in there.
Where topo lines are something you can use, but they're not a hard and fast.
Yeah.
this is what this is. Like
Right.
the steepness of things, especially, was the biggest thing I noticed. Like topo lines don't show that necessarily, how steep something is. It also doesn't show you how rocky it is and how big of gaps you're jumping over,
Right.
or trying to climb,
Sure.
or whatever. And
Yeah.
but a lot of that was just like the fog, and obviously staying warm when wet and all that. I'm used to all that, and the wind and everything. But the fog and the GPS and like tracking myself, and I mean, guys talk to you about, well, do you bring an old-fashioned compass and map with you too in case all your electronics fail? What good is that going to do me if my route looks like this, right, through the mountains?
Yeah.
And if I don't know exactly where I'm at, that compass does me no good, even with a map, right? Now, obviously, there's a way to track your way through.
Yeah.
But if my GPS dies and then I don't know where that point is, and then I don't know where I'm at, it really...
Especially your first time being in this spot and you're not familiar.
Well, exactly.
With
and that's what I mean.
else.
When you don't have visibility,
right?
Because that's the whole thing with a compass and a map. You need to know you have to have something that's a point of reference.
Yeah. Find your bearings.
And where you are in conjunction with that spot on the map, and then you can know where you need to go with use a compass, and obviously declination and all that kind of stuff comes into that. And it is something I would like to learn more. And I would love to do, get into like having that printed map with me with the compass and stuff, and maybe even trying to just do some stuff where that's all I use. Yeah. Because that's a lost art. Yeah. Right. I talk to guys about this all the time at work, or every once in a while. Like, I sweat pipe a lot still. Right. And it's still something that's fairly common, but it's becoming a lost art. Most guys just use a ProPress. And I used one the other day. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. It's so fast. It's so easy. It costs like $2,000. Yeah. And the one I needed, which was for 2-inch copper, that one cost $3,700. But you're done.
How's that go again?
Maybe a few more seconds of that, but you cut the pipe, you deburr, you put it together, and you don't have to clean it, you don't have to flux it, you don't have to heat it up just right and take the time to put all the sweat on there. I mean, it saves so much time. Yeah. But it's becoming a lost art to use a compass and map. No, hardly anybody these days that does this stuff really knows what they're doing with one, including me. I'd like to say I know what I'm doing with one. In a basic situation, especially in flat country, I could handle one myself with one. Absolutely. Yeah. But in the mountains, and things where like something like this where I can't see,
I always have a compass, and
I have a compass.
I always do a lot of looking around on my way into an area.
Oh, absolutely.
Flying in, I'm paying really close attention to what's around me. All right, every drainage going this direction. If I head east, I'm going to hit, let's just say, this river confluence. And if I hit that, and then I walk whatever direction from there, eventually I'm going to hit somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Whether it's an airstrip or a lake, some identifiable
or at least
landmark.
Getting to visibility.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think there's an element in a lot of hunters, I mean, especially some of us guys that like to think about, what if I was out on a hunt like that and all my electronics just quit? What if it's like the
lost communication and nobody could come get you?
Yeah.
And what would it take to survive?
Everybody's concerned about survival, and people forget that you're out there and you don't have any way to contact for help, and you're stuck out there, and you have to find your way to a spot to survive for X amount of time.
Suddenly your 8 backup waterproof matches don't seem like that big of a backup anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But now that being said, like on the coast is really pretty easy navigation, but you'd be surprised. You get way up into some old growth timber and things like that, and you end up turned around and lost in some valley somewhere.
You end up having to hike along a cliff with a bunch of old growth on top.
Right. And so having a compass there and knowing your bearings, meaning when I walk inland, I'm walking generally west.
Right.
On this, let's just say it's an island, right? If I get lost and I can't communicate, my GPS dies, my phone dies, and all hope is lost for navigation, I know that if I walk back east on my compass, I will eventually hit the salt water. Yeah. Stuff like that. It seems like a no-brainer, but I think even that level of just basic being able to just look at a compass and say, I came from this way, I need to go back that way.
That was something I learned with my dad growing up, and I remember walking in and just doing some basic moose hunting and stuff, and he would say, he would just ask me, like, Do you remember that tree?
My dad did the exact same thing with me as a kid.
And just talking about landmarks and not just seeing stuff on the way in, but turning around and looking at it from the back.
Right.
Because, everything looks the same, right?
Yeah.
And especially if you're going through like open areas and then wooded areas and open areas and wooded areas, it's pretty easy to find your way back, even in the dark.
Yep.
Right. It doesn't take much. But as soon as you don't have open and wooded and you're just in wooded, or as soon as you're just in open, or you're, it changes everything. And, my sense of direction is very good.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being with my dad in a Argo or something along those lines and heading out in the swamps towards a cabin. And he had done a go around on a real swampy area of the trail and was coming back into the trail, got back onto the trail and turned around and started heading back towards the truck on the trail where the trail was good. And I was like, hey, Dad, aren't we going the wrong way? And he goes, well, are we? I don't know. And he stops and he looks. And to me, I had just, kind of, that whole mind mapping of we'd gone like this and then gone like this.
Yeah.
And not like that back the way we were coming. Because we'd done so much of this stuff that he just was just going in a way and kind of distracted.
And we've all done it.
And I was a kid at the time, and kids are always paying attention to dumb stuff, and whatever it was that my mind was on. And he stops and he looks and he goes, "Oh yeah, because the hills are right there on our right.
Wrong.
No, they're on our left.
Yeah,
right.
That's
and the mountains are over there,
yeah.
which means." We need to do a 180, so we turned around and started going. He goes, "I'm glad you said something, right?" Because and it's not like we'd seen the trail at that point in the summertime. We didn't know what it looked like in the summer. We'd been running that place in snow machines for forever. But it's one of those things that now having one of the things that you have your phone and you have a GPS.
Yeah.
Right. That's one of the backups.
A little bit of redundancy.
Battery packs. I just got an order in the other day. Finally. That I ordered like a month and a half ago, but that's ordering battery stuff to Alaska of like three different smaller battery packs that I now have. Well, which will use some in conjunction with some of this podcast equipment, but also for just more versatile options for hunting.
Mm-hmm.
Not needing I have one big heavy one that I use a lot for a lot of stuff, but now I have some smaller, lighter ones that work the edge. I'll show you one. Actually, do I have those with me right now? I do. May as well show it off. For those gear nerds out there, you'll like this. Okay.
Goes right into your phone.
Goes right into your phone. And if you have an older iPhone, it has a little swap out. You can just swap that piece out with an iPhone one.
Oh, no kidding. This
is your cord for charging. You just pop that out, pull it out of there, and you can plug that into charge.
Wow.
Just pops right into the bottom of your phone. It's 5,000 mAh.
Milliamp hours.
Yes. And
I only just recently learned that probably this year when
you
told me. Yeah.
Anyway, and charges up. It's over a full phone charge, a little bit more than a full phone charge. And
awesome.
It costs I think it's like $20.
Wow.
$20 or $30, somewhere in there. And made by Charge, which I'm a huge fan of, but they're a Chinese company, which I was going to say
it's made in China.
And that's why it took so long to get here, because it came from China. But
hot off the press.
Oh yeah. But you have that Obsidian. Oh, what's the brand? The Dark
Energy Poseidon.
What's the small one called?
The Nano.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That one's like 3,000.
Yeah, three. Yeah,
this is the biggest thing.
3,000.
Now, granted, Dark Energy makes tough stuff.
Yeah, they do.
But this is smaller and lighter than that Nano
for the battery capacity.
And it has quite a bit more battery capacity than the Nano. This has 5,000. I believe the Nano has 3 or 35.
Yeah, it's either 3 or 35.
The Nano doesn't even have a full phone charge.
No, it'll get my phone, like if it's down at about 10%, it'll go to 75 or 80.
This should give you the full charge, and that's where like the Dark Energy, I get it. They have one of the nicest solar panels out there now with the new 18 watt.
I saw that.
It's expensive, but I'm thinking I might get one of those.
It's got that new tech in it, the same tech that
mine,
Big Blue does.
Yes.
It's that new face.
It's a different panels. Yeah, so it's a lot hardier, but much lighter, and
a lot more of it.
And a lot
efficient.
A lot more efficient, and it's drawing a lot more juice. Than mine is by a long shot, and even some of the other ones that Big Blue makes. But I don't know if we've even talked about that Big Blue one I ordered. We'll talk about that on a gear highlight.
Yeah, I think we'll save solar
I have
panels
2 more battery banks down here, new battery banks, but this was the one for today. You'll have to wait. We'll do a special on battery banks or something.
Yeah, it's not like we haven't tried enough different ones. But.
Right.
But yeah, I think just kind of going back to the maps to kind of wrap up that discussion, I would very much be interested in learning a lot more about how to just use paper maps and learn actually how to use a compass fully in conjunction with a full paper setup.
Which reminds me.
And go on a trip and just try to rely on that alone.
I was in REI
just to learn
today,
that skill.
and I was meant to. I saw the section, and I didn't stop and look, but I've been looking for one of those Alaska topo maps that has the entire state in topo. Those are harder to find than they used to be. Because I remember my dad having those.
I have one.
Do you have one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because you can get like the road system and the trail system and the like a lot of the primary, but the one that just where you can just flip to this grid portion of the map and have detailed topo of that spot.
I don't have it out because people that come over don't just get to look through
Well,
them.
especially those things are usually marked up.
Yeah. I've got
I want one just to study, just to look at, and just to be able to practice with the compass on and whatnot. And guys, and you can, there's services now where you pick a portion of a map and have them mail you a nicely made like waterproof map that you can.
Beaver Sports sells map sleeves.
Do they?
Yep. We can print out a section of map or whatever you want to do, and then just stick it in there and waterproof and little carrying case.
But
anyway, so you're on the way out.
I'm on the way
back on track here. How slick was those rocks? Or were those rocks?
A lot more than they were on the way in.
Yeah, I'll bet.
So a lot of it was just that lichen was real sticky when it was dry on the way in.
Mm-hmm.
No issues whatsoever. But honestly, it was the ice and the snow on the tundra that really got me on the way out.
More so than the rocks.
More so than the rocks. That really like where I found myself. The rocks themselves actually, as long as I wasn't stepping where the ice was built up, I was good, right? Because a lot of the tops of the rocks, the points sticking up, you could step on those and you had traction.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was descending the tundra and the grass where there wasn't rocks to give myself firm footing, where I found myself slipping. And I think at least at one point on the way out, I did fall on my butt on a slope.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too bad, obviously. But and then on the way out, as I started to drop in elevation, the snow and the ice disappeared. And it was just, sleety. It's because the temperature came up because it was a little lower. And all of a sudden, I see these spots in front of me. And I've got the picture pulled up here of one of the pictures I took. And all of a sudden, these caribou jump up in front of me and run off. Just like three of them. And I thought, oh, that's cool. I didn't see any caribou on the way in. I kind of thought I would, but I didn't see any. And so on my way, as I get further and further out, around areas and saddles and there's kind of a lot of that in this one area and there's just caribou everywhere, and they would just they do the caribou thing, right? they see you in the fog, and then they run until they can't see you, and then they wait till they can see you again, and then they run again. And but yeah, it was like I wish I could convey what it was like to see them milling around a couple 100 yards away in the fog, because it was like they were like phantoms,
and they were probably just totally clueless to you even be.
Oh yeah, well no, they knew I was there.
Oh, did they see you?
They could see me.
Okay,
but until they could tell. I don't know what it is that caribou use to determine what's a threat or not, right? Because at one point, and I've got a couple of pictures here. That's the stupid motion photo thing. Is that the last picture I have on here? It is. But at one point, the caribou decide they want to go up the hill I'm going up after I start up one, after passing them. And I'm back up in some snow and ice. Mm-hmm. And they all of a sudden just run towards me, suddenly see me split and go around me. And then the one side that split, stops, spins around, goes back around the way the other ones went. It was I was 50 yards, 20 yards from them at one point.
That's funny.
And they just run right up the hill that I'm laboring on my way up with my trekking poles, and just I'm wet and I'm hot, and then I'm cold, and then I'm wet, and then I'm hot again, and then now it's icy and snowy again and everything. And I just see all these caribou tracks and they just disappeared. It's must be nice. But I guess if I subsisted off of the stuff they did, I could do that with them because I wouldn't need to carry much. But I did see 3 or 4 nice bulls.
Did you?
But they were definitely a lot smarter. I saw them briefly up on a kind of a little higher spot than me, and I stopped and watched them and was going to try to take a picture of them, but they trotted off and I never saw them again. It was like they
They could tell something wasn't right.
Yeah, they were a little more leery than the rest of the herd. That I kept finding different portions of and surprising. And but yeah, it was really cool, like seeing caribou and knowing what they are, but just seeing these shapes moving around, and sometimes you can see the antlers in the fog, and it was like something you'd see in a movie or something, right? Yeah, and that was really cool.
Yeah. Those are good pictures, by the way.
And thank you.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it was a cool experience. Anyway, on my way out, and I round I get over the high elevation point, and I'm coming around it and the rocks. And at one point there, I think I mentioned this last week, or 2 weeks ago with the trekking poles, I'm working my way on this kind of steep, rocky spot where you mentioned the ice.
Yep.
And stuff, and I hadn't really slipped or had an issue. I was just being careful, looking down, paying attention to what's going on, and you get reliant on those trekking poles a lot.
Yeah.
And I put mine into a spot that very quickly deflected and went down. And you just wait for your trekking pole to catch another spot, but it didn't catch another spot.
Yeah.
And I almost lost my balance, and it was just down, and that starting to lean that way for a minute and rolling back over, and standing, and I was good. And then after that, I got a lot more careful.
Yeah.
But
yeah, nothing will quite humble you even to yourself.
Yeah. Anyway, on my way,
more than just taking a spill.
I rounded that, and I got out past around that high elevation point, and it was like beautiful blue sky. It just went from fog on the side of the mountain to on the other side of the mountain to where I just had a long, several miles of dropping into the valleys, and just beautiful. I could see miles over these hills and other mountains and rocks and creeks and blue sky and just a few clouds, and it just went from the nastiness. It was crazy because the forecast for the day out was like partly cloudy.
Yeah, I've been in there before, and it's been very similar to that.
Like the weather systems in those mountains.
When you get in there, it just kind of sets there. And you could be hitting the trail, and it's a nice day, but you can see where you're walking into, and it's just clouds and lightning bolts, and well, not quite lightning bolts, but you get the idea. You're looking in there, and you go, man, do I really want to walk in there right now? Or should I just hold out here and wait for the clouds
like I said,
to
on my way in, it was beautiful. But
yeah,
I saw a moose at one point up in there.
Yeah. And I'm sure some people are going to ask, how come you didn't shoot a caribou? And I guess we have to clarify, caribou are not open in that part of the state.
They weren't open there. Not at the moment, no. Well, and the other thing is, I didn't really feel like carrying a caribou out of there, even if they could have.
No.
I didn't want to carry caribou
out.
That
area is a special opportunity.
I did that on the guided hunt.
Yeah.
and it was worth it.
Yeah.
Personally,
It'd have to be real big.
It'd have to be real big, or I'd have to have a real good reason for wanting to carry. And honestly, I got around the mountain and down, and about a mile left in the hike, and there was more caribou. They were just everywhere.
Yeah.
They were everywhere that day. I didn't see any on the way in.
Really? Not one?
Nope. On the way out, hundreds.
Wow. Yeah, I've been in that area not too long ago, and there's that herd in that part of the state fluctuates a lot.
Mm-hmm. And it's just caribou too. Like they just move all over the place.
Yeah, but there hasn't been hunting in there in some time. So that
right.
I would hope that at some point they'll reopen opportunities, because that'd be a fun spot to be able to have a pocket full of tags and caribou.
Correct.
Sheep. There's some bears in there too. Did you see any bears the whole time?
No, I would have shot a bear.
Yeah. There's some good numbers of bears.
I think I did see some. No, I saw some wolf scat
in pockets. There's a decent number of wolves.
I saw some wolf scat way up high there, but it's pretty rolling country.
Yeah,
and parts of it. So, but it was an awesome experience. And I talked to one guy before I went, who also went on a sheep hunt this year with a buddy of his, and he was like, "Hey, if you need somebody to go along, and he needs the kind of guy who could say that to me, right?" Yeah. And who I was like, I said, well, if I wanted somebody to go with me, I'd take you up on it, but I want to do this by myself. I want to go solo. And he said, well, I went on a solo sheep hunt years ago by myself, and I said, never again. I didn't come out feeling that way.
Yeah.
I loved it, and I'll do it again.
Yeah.
I'd love to do it. Who knows? It may be a long time before I do a solo again, or maybe it won't happen. depending on what's going on and who and how and access and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But
right.
I would absolutely do that again in a heartbeat.
That spot, I've always thought that if there was somebody else that could go in there together with me and then split once you get in there.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
And hunt different parts of it. And then one guy shoots a ram and you can text the other guy and say, hey, I need a hand. And you can meet up and pack it out together. I feel like that would be a really good area to pull that off in.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of terrain that you can just...
Well, and it takes so much time to get to looking in the other spots. And,
yes.
Yeah.
You can cover a lot more ground.
Right.
But yeah, no, I'm glad you had a good time. That sounds like a blast.
It was.
While you were doing that, I was out moose hunting.
You were.
Didn't shoot any moose the first half of September.
Yeah.
Cold. Go ahead.
I'll say what was crazy about this year was usually I'm the one out moose hunting.
Yep.
And you're off guiding or sheep hunting or whatever.
Yep.
And this year I did not moose hunt one day, which still seems weird to me. But no, I sacrificed my moose season and time to sheep hunt.
Yeah, having to work extra and save up the extra time off and
all that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think you enjoyed yourself.
I sure did.
Yeah. Yeah, I went moose hunting and went out with my wife when I came home, and we went out, like I said, with her dad out to out to their camp and saw some moose. Nothing legal.
Nothing legal. That's the story, isn't it?
And yeah, it didn't really have any event. I mean, there was population-wise, it's improved, I think, a little bit.
You think so?
But it's still got a ways to go. That there are some parts of the state that were pretty adversely affected by some winter storms that we had here a few years ago and some freezing rain in the middle of winter, like December, January timeframe, on top of a deep snowpack.
Right.
And then we got more snow on top of the ice layer. And so what ended up happening with the moose was that ice layer made it really hard for them to get around in, and the predators could just run on top of it. So the moose really took a hit. They had a hard time digging down to food. They had a hard time walking around. I mean, their legs were getting all cut up, and there was a lot of moose mortality that winter. And we've noticed the numbers in that area drop pretty significantly since then. But they're doing better this year. So it was kind of all a last-minute thing. And I had made some other plans in September to do other things. But some things happened, and I ended up not following my original plan. We'll just leave it at that. And so my wife said, well, you have some time here, and circumstances allowed. And so we said, well, we'll go hunt at her dad's camp. Then we'll go hunt with Remington. And I hadn't been able to hunt with Remington in September for years because usually he's busy at work, or I'm guiding, or I'm doing something else up here. And so we ended
combination.
Yeah, and it just never quite lines up for us to hunt together in September. And so we said, hey, well, we have time this year to moose hunt together for a few days anyway. I think it was 4 or 5 days or so. And we hunted, and there we saw a decent number of moose. It was a totally different area than we had just been with your dad's camp. And we had a good time there. You know, it was nice relaxing after August, and you're not walking every day. And kind of just, it feels like a vacation to an extent. You know, you get up in the morning, you call, you do your due diligence, and you sit there in a lawn chair and read a book and just kind of hang out. And so then we went hunting with Remy and had a good time there, saw a bunch of moose, saw a bunch of bulls. Just that particular spot that we went to, the terrain was not conducive to getting to the moose. We could see, but we could not kill and easily retrieve. From a perspective that was within our desire of work. Yeah. We'll just leave it at that. Because, I mean, there was, at one point, there was a bull that would come out last light. You know, he'd have cows with him, and he would come out to some calling, I think, at the end of the night. But he was pretty cagey, and he had a number of cows, and there was a small satellite bull with the crew there. But he would come out, and he always hung out there around 600 or so yards, 600, 700 yards, which in ideal conditions would be a doable shot.
Right.
We didn't have ideal conditions. The brush was this tall, from the floor to this tall. So we're looking at like 3.5,
so you got to
4
find
feet
him once
tall.
you shoot him at the least, yeah.
Well, and that was where we were. Over where he was, it was halfway up his belly line. And so, yeah, let alone finding him, but we're on a hill like this.
Yeah.
So trying to find a spot to get stable to shoot in brush this tall just wasn't going to happen. And by the time he would ever show into view, it was always too dark to shoot anyway. It was just, you could see him, but you didn't want to shoot him. It just wasn't the right move. And so we hung out in there for a while and gave it everything we had, really, for what we were dealing with. Came back out, came home, and I called up another buddy of mine that's got a boat. And he had mentioned that he wanted to do some moose hunting, but he didn't have anybody else to go with. And so we talked, and we said, well, let's take the boat out somewhere.
Yeah, I remember you saying, hey, I'm going to go out and go hunt. And I was like, good for you.
Yeah. At this point.
And you told me the area you were going, which I was not. I was familiar with the unit, we'll say.
Yeah. We just looked at a spot, and I said, well, this looks moosey. Let's go here. And it was, again, just thrown together just due to plan changes.
Sometimes that's the best hunts.
And it ended up going that way. We went out in the boat, and the spot looked just as good in person as it did on the map, which is rarely the case, especially on the water, because you never know. Fall-time water levels are not always going to be as high as they need to be to get a boat of that size and into a spot like that. But we made it in there fine, no event on the way in, and ended up only hunting for about 3 days or so, I think 3.5 days. And every night there was moose responding to the call from camp. And so that the first night we just kind of called from camp. I just kind of wanted to assess the area and see if there's anything real near to camp that would respond to a call. And it did. And there was a bull that I think walked probably within 50 yards of our tent the first night. We were using that teepee from Peaks, Peaks 4-man.
Yeah.
Didn't even have the stove set up, by the way. It was in the 50s.
Oh, okay.
It was raining, but it was so warm, and you just sacrifice a lot of space in the teepee when you have the stove set up.
Yeah, it's only a 4-man tent, right?
Yeah, and so, but by the time you have a bag of gear at the foot of each sleeping bag,
right,
and then you have your space in the middle, and you got stuff hanging from the rafters and the ceiling. And so we just said, well, until it gets cold or we get wet enough, we're not even going to set up the stove.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't, and we didn't even set up the whole time. It never even got cold enough, which for mid to late September,
that's pretty good.
Pretty nice.
Considering what I was dealing with.
It was wet,
yeah,
but it was nice. It was not all that cold. And so the second night we went into a spot, we had that bull walk real close to the tent that night. And then we heard a cow bellowing after that, probably 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Heard a cow bellowing. And so I'm looking at the maps and getting a direction and thinking, okay, it looks like this swamp and there might be a trail that leads in here. No trails, just brush. And so the next day, found our way into another spot where I thought that some of the calling was coming from the night before. Okay. Called from there that afternoon and that evening, and same thing. We could hear them again, but they were another spot farther, and they were even deeper in there. And so now I'm thinking, can I bring them out? Can I call them to me? How far do I want to go to them?
Right.
How much swampier does it get the farther I get in here? And so I told my buddy, I said, well, we're going to have to try one more spot farther. And if we can call them into that spot, then we'll kill them there. But that's as far as I want to carry moose back to the boat. And, there are a lot of people that will not shoot a boat unless it's 100 yards or less from the boat.
Shoot a moose.
Did I just say shoot a boat?
You did.
There's a lot of folks that won't shoot a moose more than about 100 yards from the boat.
Yeah.
Having that in mind, we made the decision that, all right, we are willing to go this far. And it wasn't a terrible distance. I think it was probably about a third of a mile, if not a little bit less than that. Not terrible, but swampy. And when it wasn't swampy, it was extremely thick brush. So we quietly, as we could, made the first distance from camp on the third night and just tried to go real slow, real quiet. This was early afternoon, trying to time it from the activity levels that we'd been hearing. And we ended up getting to the clearing. Well, we ended up getting to the first clearing that we had been at the night before, probably about 4 o'clock. And from there, I told my buddy, I said, now I'm going to start making some noise because we've heard this bull, we've heard this cow, we hear them. I think they're in the spot. Now that we're getting into a few hundred yards of them, I think that on our way in here, I'm going to start breaking some stuff and grunting and just lightly, not trying to be pushy, but just let them know The bull that was calling from camp, and then last night from this spot, and now this afternoon, he's in your backyard. So trying to portray that advance.
Right.
If they're even that smart. I don't know. It sounded good, so I tried it. And I started snapping a few things every few steps and got out to the clearing, hadn't heard anything yet. Kind of let things settle. You know, you kind of find your spot.
Right.
Okay, now we're looking at this spot, and all right, we're going to post up and stand at the edge of the brush over there. Got the tripod set up and set up my rifle, and I said, all right, now we'll give it some time, be quiet, stand still, put on a jacket or whatever so we don't have to move later on in the afternoon and evening. Got all set up, and we're standing there in the brush looking over this little 120-yard wide clearing, but it's longer out of sight that we can't see around the corner.
Yeah, seems fairly common.
Yeah. And I ripped out a cow call probably 45 minutes later. Long, sweet cow call. And immediately, he just starts trashing. I mean, it sounds like somebody with a shovel and a pile of pea gravel. Just... And I look at my buddy, and he looks at me and big eyes, and I said, we got him. Because he's close. You know, relatively speaking to the last two nights, we know this is where he is. And so then the chess match began, and it ended up being an hour and a half to an hour and 40 minutes of calling back and forth and cow calls. And then shortly thereafter in the beginning, I just called a couple of times, and I could hear him walk, and I could hear him grunting and raking a little bit as he came. And then he just cut out and got quiet. And I let him be for probably 20 minutes. And then I just lightly raked on a willow brush, grunted a few times, and then he grunted, no raking. So then I grunted to match him again. And then I raked a little bit harder. And then he raked really hard. It sounded like he was 100 yards away. At that point, I thought, here he comes. He's coming through the brush right now. He was just that much louder. And so once he figured there was a bull there, he got more upset, and he closed the distance a lot faster. But still took his time, and it was, it was a blast. I'm glad that he did that rather than just come running in at the first cow call. It was a lot of fun. I guess long story short, he popped out later that evening and through a long sequence of calling, popped out at about 80 yards. Wow. He was standing in the brush. I could see his palms through the brush and through the top of the willows. And as soon as I saw his antlers, I said, yep, I'm going to shoot that bull. And my buddy had his phone up to video, but as always seems to happen when you're trying to video a buddy, you kind of move the phone away as you're watching, then boom, gun goes off, and the phone wasn't on the moose. Right. I've done it too, but so I shot the moose. He had turned because right at the last minute before I was going to shoot him, another one of his cows from whence he had just come from bellowed, and the cows were really vocal on this hunt. Okay, there was a cow off the other way behind him that had bellowed a few minutes prior that he was walking towards us, but also looking over in her direction. And then right as I was going to shoot him totally broadside, I had a view of his chest. The cow that he had just left, apparently, that we saw later on that night while we were butchering this one, bellowed from over there. And he turned around and started taking steps, like walking away out of view of me. He forgot about me and was going back to that cow. And so I had a clearing through the brush that big that his chest left, and then his neck, there was this high top in the willows that I could see through. And this is my only shot. He might not come back, and I can't guarantee it. He's right here. I'm just going to shoot him in the neck, which is not really recommended. Some people do that. I've never done it on a moose. I'm hesitant to admit this, but my thought process was, I'm going to zap him with a neck shot. He's going to go down, and then I'm going to get up there on him real fast, and I'm going to shoot him again because I'm going to have to, because I know how this goes. You spine a moose, and if you don't actually hit the spine...
Right, you'll shock them enough they'll go down, but then next thing you know, they're jumping up and running away. Yeah,
and they're gone.
And most of the time, guys are standing there looking at their gun because it didn't go off because they didn't put another round in it. Yeah. So, and you can even hear that in the video that even though the moose wasn't in the frame, it was rifle went off, bolt was racked, but all I could see was hooves in the air. And then I'm seeing mud just flung, like I'm not kidding, like 40 yards. He was just kicking up mud and just throwing a mess and trying to get back up. He was definitely stunned and down and out, but he was going to get back up. And so
my buddy and I made our way across the little clearing. Again, 80 yards away. I wouldn't have done this at 350.
Or even 200.
Yeah. But knowing that I could just walk right over the corner, shoot him again, that's what we did. We went up to him, shot him again, finished him off, and that was that. And that's exactly what happened, as far as the next shot. I didn't hit him directly in the spine. I shot a little bit over it, like just a tiny bit, but it didn't break it. It just shocked him and put him down.
Right.
Again, not recommended. It was just in the situation, and when you're familiar enough and confident enough to make that shot, then you might pull it off. But it's certainly not something that I would want to do again, unless I had to, but sometimes it's just what you have to do.
Right.
But all went well there. We got the moose packed out. And
got any pictures of it?
I do have a picture of it. I'll get it to you.
That's it. Yeah, well, and that was friend's first time, like, really having to pack a moose, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you guys were talking about that a little bit.
There you go.
Nice. Well, we'll put that up there. Yeah. On the, you'll have to send that to me.
Yeah, he was a 46.
Nice.
46?
Nice. Bigger than the moose I killed this year.
Yeah. There he was in the Barney's pack.
Nice shape to him.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a good-looking bull. Your dad's got him right now. He did a boiling job on him. And
cool.
Yeah, I think he'll look good. Euro. Or Freedom Mount.
Freedom
Not
Mount,
a European mount. Yeah, I got to get my language straight there.
Are you going to put that inside somewhere?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
You don't
yet.
have a lot of this. The ceilings in your place aren't real tall.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I will have room for it. I'm going to try to, though.
Right. In front of the bear?
It's just going to stick out. Let me stand
Stick him
up
over here so we have an antler in the frame.
Catch a brow tine in the back of the neck when you stand up too fast.
Right.
He might go there.
Oh, there you go.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, it all went well. Not nearly as exciting of a story as sheep hunting is, I don't think. But
more exciting than no sheep.
There's something to be said for just being in the mountains. There is a lot of fun.
But and also for our listeners too. Like one thing you guys can look for. We'll see if it's in this episode. I'm gonna try to implement episode chapters or timestamps, so people can see when it'll just kind of a breakdown. If you guys listen to I don't know if Joe Rogan's podcast has them.
I don't know.
I know that what's this past weekend has them. The Theo Vaughn's podcast has them, where you can go in the episode description right below. It'll say intro and then like a breakdown of all the different topics that he'll talk about with his guest or whatever.
Yeah.
And so if there's something specific you're wanting to listen to and you don't want to or have time at the moment to listen to the whole episode, you want to hear that, then you can jump ahead. So something like that for an episode like this, right? Yeah. If somebody's just not interested in sheep hunting, I don't know how, right? But if somebody's just not interested to an hour and 45 minutes of talking about sheep hunting, then they could skip ahead to the moose, right?
Sure.
And or vice versa or whatever. And I think something like that, it's something that not a lot of podcasts have yet, but we're trying to be on the cutting edge here, right? Hopefully our video quality is better this week than last time.
Yeah, we're kind of learning as we go here. I don't take any credit for any of the production in. That's all you.
Oh, you help us all look good, right?
I don't know about that.
But it's an exciting journey that we're on here. And
yeah.
I think every podcast like this has there's this learning curve at the beginning. Unless you're a seasoned podcaster, and there's guys that's all they do, right? Mm-hmm. They'll develop and start podcasts for people and teach them how to run the whole thing and buy the equipment and all that. And I mean, that's kind of what I'm doing, just without the benefit of having done it dozens of times or worked for a big company. Yeah. And I enjoy it. I really do.
Well, you're doing a fine job.
And at some point, if anybody needs resources for podcasting, reach out to me on Instagram. I have a few, especially if you're local. Mm-hmm. I have some local contacts and whatnot, guys that I talk to and reference who have helped me, and just with some sound editing and whatnot, because you can figure out some sound editing on your own, but having somebody who actually knows what they're doing, helps a lot.
Yeah,
and hopefully this sounds pretty good.
Yeah,
I thought the last one turned out pretty good, and hopefully the next one does. And like I said, hopefully within a few episodes.
Yeah,
we'll be on a bit more of a.
We'll be fine-tuning the art.
We'll be fine-tuning everything. Yeah, some of it's just my editing flow, right? Figuring out how to put all this stuff together. But that's not why you guys listen to this, is to hear about how it's all done. So
yeah. Well, I know we got a few comments before about we want to see the whole bear in the frame of the video.
Yeah. Hopefully that happens this time. We'll see. We'll find out in post, right?
And if not, then we'll move the bear.
Yeah.
And this ain't even my bear. This is my wife's bear.
We'll have to have her on to tell the story.
This is my wife's first bear.
Talk about that bear.
Sucker was almost dead of old age.
It was an old bear, that's right.
Yeah, it was very, very old. Yeah, worn out teeth, falling out of
maybe
its
have
head.
to have her and my dad on to tell the story.
At some point.
Yeah. Bear stories.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of bear stories on this podcast.
A lot of bear stories. We like to kill bears.
We do like to kill bears.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.
Galactica.
Well, thanks for listening to the episode this week, folks. We really appreciate all of your support. We have gotten a lot of feedback from you, our listeners. We really do want to say thank you to people for supporting the new show
means a lot.
And following along with us. I know this has been a journey for everyone involved in this, and so we appreciate it. Thank you for that, and thank you for all of you that have left a good review already on multiple platforms.
Yes.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Given a 5-star rating and a good review goes an exponentially long ways towards helping us grow the show and getting us
a like and a comment on YouTube.
Yeah, getting us in front of more folks. And if you don't like the show, then you can feel free to send us a message. We have an Instagram profile and also a Facebook one. We're not really interested in Facebook or TikTok or any of that kind of stuff. But, for Instagram, if you want to reach out to us, it is the Great Alaska Hunting Podcast.
Yep.
On Instagram.
And then our email is info@greatalaskahuntingpodcast.com.
So there's no the in the email.
There's no the in the email.
So just info@greatalaskahuntingpodcast.com. Well, there you go. If you'd like to reach out to us and help us improve on something, then feel free to do that as well. We would appreciate any helpful tips or advice as we're kind of starting this from ground zero. Our next episode, tentatively, is going to be with a guest that we've got coming in, if all of our plans go through accordingly. But we've got a retired hunting guide, a longtime guide from up here. He's a character.
Is he?
I've talked to him before. He's been around a long time. He's done a lot of really neat stuff, and he's got a lot of great stories. He's an entertaining guy to talk to, so hopefully we can get that to translate well on a podcast form. Sometimes that's a little bit interesting to do. But if you guys have any suggestions or questions that you would like us to ask the first guest of the Great Alaska Hunting Podcast, then it'll be a hunting guide about tales of the old days. I know I've already got a line of questions.
I'm sure you do.
I'm sure you will too once you hear about where he used to run and some of the old days.
Well, you know my method too. I'll just listen just on the fly.
Yeah.
You can tell sometimes by how poorly they're worded, but
but I'm looking forward to talking to this fella, and we have a few other guests lined up in the pipe, I guess, as you could say. Yep, upstream, coming down the line.
Yep.
But so if you have topics that you'd like us to hit on or questions that you'd like to have featured in the show, you can reach us at our email or our Instagram, or you can send either one of us a direct message on Instagram as well. Thank you to the companies that have decided to work with us and partner with us on this platform, Stealthy Hunter, Hammer Bullets, and we're also working along the side with Initial Ascent packs. I've used an Initial Ascent pack now off and on for a little over a year now, I think, on a few different hunts, and then I ended up giving you...
You did
my first one as kind of a
very grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, you've gotten your time out of it already.
I have now. Yeah.
You've done more sheep hunts with it than I have.
I guess that'd be true.
Yeah. Because I've used my Barneys the last few years on sheep hunts, but and now we're both running an IA 8K.
Yep.
8,000 cubic inch pack. My wife has an Initial Ascent. They have a special frame and build size for women's packs.
That's right, they do.
Greatly benefits my wife, who used to be stuck using a pack that I wouldn't be using at the time. That there was a Stone Glacier that I've got that was built as a frame for me that just didn't quite adjust enough to fit her well. So she's been rocking an IA pack for about the same amount of time now.
Yeah.
It works pretty well.
You know, when we were
handles a lot of weight well.
When her and I were running some bear baits earlier in the spring this year, and she grabbed one of your guys' Kelty pack frames.
Yep.
And she grabbed yours.
Didn't work out too well, did
it? She was not doing real well with that.
I think she talked about that. It messed up her shoulder for a few weeks.
Yeah.
I
remember talking about the next time we went in because she adjusted it at some point, but those aren't the quickest adjusting setups. So she was like, I'll go with it. And then, well, when it's a little different, it's one thing.
Yeah.
But when you're going from a real big frame person to a small frame, it really makes a difference.
Yeah. So anyway, check out Initial Ascent Packs. We're happy to be doing some work with them and establishing some fun times ahead, I think, with them. So anyway, if you like the show, subscribe,
comment,
5-star review,
comment on YouTube. If you have, you can ask questions there too. We'll respond.
Share it with a friend, text them a link, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, folks.